My name is Julian, and today I'm going to tell you about the day God spoke to me, the day He said words that shattered my entire approach to life. The weight of control is not yours, but mine. But to understand why those words changed everything, you need to understand who I was before I heard them. You need to understand the man who believed control was survival, that letting go was weakness, that if he didn't manage every detail, everything would fall apart. But before I continue, if this story resonates with you, if you're exhausted from trying to control everything, if the weight of holding your world together is crushing you, please subscribe to this channel, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment about what you're trying to control right now. Your honesty might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. I was a project manager for a construction company in Denver. 41 years old, married to my high school sweetheart Sarah, father to two teenage daughters, Emma, 16, and Olivia, 14. On paper, my life was successful. Good job, stable marriage, healthy kids. The American dream, right? But underneath the surface, I was drowning in the weight of trying to control everything, every single thing. At work, I micromanaged every project, every timeline, every budget, every worker, every decision. My team called me the helicopter behind my back because I was always hovering, always checking, always correcting. I couldn't delegate, couldn't trust anyone else to do things right. If I wasn't personally overseeing every detail, something would go wrong. I was certain of it. At home, I was the same. I controlled our family schedule down to the minute. Dinner at 6 p.m. sharp every night. Homework time from 7 to 8:30. Bedtime at 10 on school nights, 11 on weekends. Our budget was planned 3 months in advance. Every expense tracked, every dollar accounted for, nothing left to chance. I controlled my daughters' lives, their activities, their friends, their decisions. Emma wanted to try out for the school musical. Too risky, too time-consuming, would interfere with her studies. Olivia wanted to join the soccer team. Too many practices, too much driving, too hard to schedule around. I had reasons for everything, good reasons, logical reasons, reasons that kept our life ordered and predictable and safe. Sarah would try to talk to me about it. Julian, you're suffocating them. You're suffocating me. We can't breathe under this level of control. I'm not controlling. I'm responsible. Someone has to manage things. Someone has to make sure everything runs smoothly. But everything doesn't have to run smoothly all the time. Life is messy. People make mistakes. That's okay. It's not okay. Mistakes have consequences. Chaos has costs. If I don't keep things under control, everything falls apart. I genuinely believed that my control was the only thing holding our life together, that if I relaxed my grip even slightly, disaster would follow, that the weight of keeping everything functioning was mine to carry, and I couldn't put it down. The anxiety was crushing. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. with my mind racing through the next day's schedule. What could go wrong? What had I forgotten to plan for? What variables hadn't I accounted for? I'd lie there making mental lists, adjusting timelines, preparing contingencies. I had stomach problems from the stress, tension headaches that lasted for days. My doctor prescribed medication for anxiety and high blood pressure. You need to find ways to relax, he'd say. Reduce stress. Let go of some of this need to control everything. But I couldn't. Because control wasn't just a preference. It was how I survived. It was how I kept the chaos at bay. It was how I protected my family from the unpredictability of life. Where did this come from? I knew the answer, but didn't like to think about it. My father had been unreliable, an alcoholic who'd lose jobs, disappear for days, leave our family in constant crisis. My mother had tried to hold things together but couldn't. We'd lived in chaos. Unpaid bills, evictions, school supplies we couldn't afford, food insecurity, the constant terror of not knowing what disaster was coming next. When I was 12, my father left for good, and I'd made a vow to myself. I would never let my family live like that. I would never be unreliable like my father. I would control every variable, manage every risk, ensure that chaos never touched my wife and daughters the way it had touched me as a child. So I became the opposite of my father, hyper-responsible, hyper-controlling, the man who managed everything so nothing could go wrong. But the weight was crushing me. I could feel it. The constant pressure, the exhausting vigilance, the impossible burden of trying to control every aspect of life. But I didn't know how to put it down, didn't know how to let go, didn't know how to live any other way. 3 weeks before everything changed, Emma had a breakdown. She was in her room doing homework when I heard crying. I knocked on her door. "Emma, you okay?" "Go away, Dad." I opened the door anyway. She was at her desk, textbooks spread around her, tears streaming down her face. "What's wrong?" "I can't do this anymore. I can't live up to your expectations. I can't be perfect all the time. I'm so tired of trying to control everything the way you do. I'm exhausted, Dad. I'm so exhausted." Her words hit me like a physical blow. She wasn't just talking about homework. She was talking about me, about what I'd taught her, about how my need to control everything had infected her, too. "Emma, I just want what's best for you." "No, you want me to never make mistakes, to never fail, to never be out of control. But Dad, that's not living. That's just surviving in fear. And I don't want to live that way." After that conversation, I couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said. Was she right? Had my control become toxic? Had I been so focused on preventing chaos that I'd created a different kind of chaos, the chaos of a family that couldn't breathe, couldn't make mistakes, couldn't be human? But I still didn't know how to change, how to let go, how to stop carrying the weight of control that had defined me for 30 years. 2 weeks later, on a Sunday morning, something happened. We were driving to church, a family obligation I'd scheduled into our routine because it looked good, not because I believed in any of it. I was stressed about a work project, mentally running through contingencies, barely paying attention to the sermon. Then the pastor said something that stopped me cold. "Some of you are carrying weights God never asked you to carry, trying to control things God never intended you to control, and you're exhausted, crushed, dying under the burden. And God is saying to you today, the weight of control is not yours, but mine. Put it down, trust me. Let me carry what you were never meant to carry." I felt like he was speaking directly to me, like God himself was speaking directly to me. The weight of control is not yours, but mine. But I didn't know how to put it down, didn't know how to trust, didn't know how to let God or anyone carry what I'd spent my entire adult life convinced was mine alone to bear. That was 2 weeks ago. And now everything is about to change. Now I'm about to learn what happens when you finally let go of control you were never meant to have. When you stop trying to hold your world together and let God do what only He can do. When the weight of control that's been crushing you is finally lifted, even though letting go feels like dying. The week after that Sunday sermon, I couldn't shake the words. The weight of control is not yours, but mine. They echoed in my mind during meetings, during dinner, during the sleepless hours at 3 a.m. when I was making mental contingency plans for the next day. But I didn't know what to do with them. How do you just stop controlling? How do you let go of something that's been your survival mechanism for 30 years? How do you trust when trusting has always felt like setting yourself up for disaster? On Tuesday, everything started unraveling. A major project at work, a commercial building we'd been constructing for 8 months, failed inspection, structural issues. The inspector said we had to tear down 3 floors and rebuild them. Millions of dollars, weeks of delay. And it was my project, my responsibility, my failure to catch the problem. My boss called me into his office. "Julian, what happened? You oversee every detail. How did this get past you?" "I don't know. I checked everything. I verified every measurement, every material, every procedure. I don't understand how." "Maybe that's the problem. Maybe you're so busy trying to control every tiny detail that you're missing the big picture. Maybe you need to trust your team more. Delegate. Let them do their jobs instead of hovering over them constantly." "But if I don't oversee everything, then maybe things would actually run better." "Julian, you're a good project manager, But this micromanaging, it's not working. Your team is afraid to make decisions because they know you'll second-guess everything. They're waiting for you to tell them what to do instead of thinking for themselves. And when something goes wrong, you take all the blame because you've made yourself responsible for everything. After the meeting, I sat in my car in the parking lot, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath me. He was right. My control hadn't prevented the failure. It might have caused it. By managing every detail, I'd created a team that couldn't function independently, that couldn't catch problems because they'd been trained to wait for me to catch them. The weight of that realization was crushing. If my control was actually making things worse, not better, then what had I been doing for all these years? What had I sacrificed? My health, my relationships, my peace, for a strategy that didn't even work? That evening I came home to find Sarah in the kitchen, and I could tell immediately something was wrong. "Julian, we need to talk. Sit down." My stomach clenched. Those words, "we need to talk," never preceded good news. I sat at the kitchen table while Sarah stood at the counter, her back to me, gathering her thoughts. "I can't live like this anymore," she said finally, turning to face me. "I've tried. For years, I've tried to adapt to your need to control everything, to follow your schedules, to live by your rules, to let you make all the decisions. But Julian, I'm dying inside. I feel like I'm not a person anymore. I'm just a character in your perfectly controlled story." "Sarah, I'm just trying to take care of our family." "No, you're trying to control our family. There's a difference. Taking care of us would mean listening to what we need, respecting our autonomy, trusting us to make our own decisions. What you're doing is suffocating us. The girls can't breathe. I can't breathe." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I need space. I need you to figure out why you have this compulsive need to control everything, to get help, to change. Because if you don't, I don't know if our marriage can survive this. Are you leaving me?" "I'm not leaving, but I'm not going to keep living like this either. Something has to change, Julian. Something has to give." After she left the kitchen, I sat there alone, feeling like my world was collapsing. The project failure, Sarah's ultimatum, Emma's breakdown. Everything I'd been trying to prevent through control was happening anyway. Maybe because of the control, not in spite of it. I didn't sleep that night, just lay in bed next to Sarah, who turned away from me, creating physical distance to match the emotional distance, and stared at the ceiling. The anxiety was worse than ever. My mind racing, my chest tight, my breath shallow. Around 2 a.m., I got up and went to my home office, sat at my desk in the dark, and for the first time in years, I prayed, really prayed. Not the rote prayers at church, but desperate, honest pleading. "God, I don't know if you're even there. I don't know if you care, but I'm drowning. The weight of trying to control everything is crushing me, and it's not even working. Everything I've tried to prevent is happening anyway. My work is failing. My marriage is failing. My daughters are suffering because of me. The pastor said the weight of control is not mine, but yours. But I don't know how to give it to you. I don't know how to let go. I've spent 30 years convinced that if I don't control everything, disaster will happen. And now disaster is happening even with all my control. So what do I do? How do I stop? How do I trust you when I don't even know how to trust?" The darkness didn't answer. The silence didn't lift. But something small shifted inside me. A crack in the certainty, a tiny opening to the possibility that maybe there was another way. The next morning, exhausted and desperate, I did something I'd never done before. I called in sick to work. Not because I was physically ill, but because I needed help. And I made an appointment with a therapist. Dr. Patricia Reynolds came highly recommended. Her practice focused on anxiety and control issues. I sat in her office that afternoon, feeling exposed and ashamed. Therapy felt like admitting failure, like confessing that I couldn't handle my own life. "Tell me what brought you here," she said gently. So I told her about the compulsive need to control everything, about the anxiety, about my childhood with an unreliable father, about my vow to never let my family experience chaos, about how the control that was supposed to protect them was actually hurting them, about Emma's breakdown, about Sarah's ultimatum, about the project failure. "It sounds like you're carrying an enormous weight," Dr. Reynolds said. "The weight of trying to control variables that can't actually be controlled. The weight of responsibility for outcomes you can't actually guarantee. The weight of believing that if you're vigilant enough, careful enough, controlling enough, you can prevent bad things from happening." That's exactly it, and I don't know how to put it down. Let me ask you something. Has your control actually prevented bad things from happening? Or has it just given you the illusion of prevention while actually creating different problems? The question hit hard. I thought it was working, but this week showed me it's not. Things are falling apart anyway, maybe because of my control, not in spite of it. Here's what I want you to understand, Julian. Control is a trauma response. It's what we develop when we've experienced chaos or unpredictability that hurt us. We think if I can just control everything, I'll be safe. I can prevent the pain from happening again. But control is an illusion. We can't actually control most of what happens in life. We can influence, we can respond, but we can't control. And the attempt to control the uncontrollable creates enormous anxiety and damages our relationships. So what do? Just let everything fall apart? No. You learn to distinguish between what you can actually control and what you can't. You focus your energy on the things within your sphere of influence, your own choices, your own responses, your own actions, and you practice letting go of everything else, trusting that things will work out even when you're not managing every detail, or accepting that things might not work out perfectly, and that's okay too. But it's not okay. Chaos hurts people. I know. I lived through it. You did. And I'm sorry you experienced that. But Julian, you're not your father. Your daughters aren't you as a child. The chaos you experienced isn't the chaos your family would experience if you relaxed control. You've created a different kind of chaos. The chaos of a family that can't breathe, can't make mistakes, can't learn to handle challenges because you're handling everything for them. We talked for the full hour. She gave me homework, make a list of everything I was trying to control, then categorize each item as something I could actually influence versus something outside my control. And for the things outside my control, I needed to practice consciously letting go, just a little bit at a time. This isn't going to be easy, she warned. Letting go of control when it's been your survival mechanism will feel like dying. You'll experience intense anxiety. You'll want to grab control back. But if you can sit with that discomfort, if you can tolerate the anxiety without reacting to it, you'll find that things don't actually fall apart the way you fear they will. That evening, I sat down with the assignment, made the list of everything I was trying to control. It was 3 pages long. Work projects, family schedules, my daughter's choices, my wife's decisions, our finances, our social life, extended family dynamics, future outcomes, other people's opinions, variables I couldn't even name but felt responsible for anyway. Then I tried to categorize them. What could I actually control versus what was outside my control? And the truth was devastating. Almost everything on my list was outside my actual control. I could influence some things. I could make choices about my own actions, but control, real control, I had almost none. I'd spent 30 years exhausting myself trying to control things I could never actually control. And in the process, I'd neglected the one thing I could control, my own response to uncertainty, my own choice to trust, my own decision about where to place my faith. Sarah came into the room while I was working on the list. "What are you doing?" "Therapy homework. Making a list of everything I'm trying to control." She looked at the 3 pages. "That's a lot." "Yeah, and almost none of it is actually within my control. I've been trying to control the uncontrollable for 30 years, and it's been killing me. Killing us." She sat down beside me. "I'm glad you went to therapy. That's a big step. I don't know if I can change. This control thing, it's so deep. It's who I've been for as long as I can remember. I'm not asking you to change overnight. I'm asking you to try, to get help, To work on it, that's all, just try. That night before bed, I looked at the list again, and I thought about the pastor's words. The weight of control is not yours, but mine. Dim, what if that was true? What if all these things I was trying to control, my daughter's futures, my wife's happiness, my work's success, my family's security, what if they were never mine to control in the first place? What if they were God's? What if my job wasn't to control outcomes, but to trust the one who actually could? The thought was both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because letting go meant giving up the illusion of safety I'd built my life around. Liberating because maybe, just maybe, I could put down a weight I was never meant to carry. I didn't know how to do it yet. Didn't know how to trust. Didn't know how to let go. But for the first time in 30 years, I was willing to try. And that willingness, small as it was, changed everything. The next week was one of the hardest of my life. Not because external circumstances got worse, though the project failure at work continued to be a nightmare, but because I was trying to change patterns that had been carved into my psyche for 3 decades. Dr. Reynolds had given me a simple exercise. Pick one small thing from my control list and consciously let go of it. Just one thing. Practice tolerating the anxiety that came from not controlling it. I chose dinner time. For years, dinner had been at 6 p.m. sharp. Everyone at the table. No exceptions, no variations. It was one of the pillars of my controlled family life. On Thursday evening, I told Sarah and the girls, I'm trying something. Dinner doesn't have to be at exactly 6 anymore. We can be flexible. If you're in the middle of something, finish it. We'll eat when everyone's ready. They all stared at me like I'd announced we were moving to Mars. Are you feeling okay, Dad? Olivia asked. I'm trying to let go of some control, trying to be less rigid. So, we'll eat when we're ready tonight. No rush. Emma looked skeptical. Who are you? And what have you done with my father? Despite their joking, I could see relief in their faces. Hope, even. Like maybe the suffocating control was finally loosening. But for me, it was agony. 6 came and went. Emma was still doing homework. Olivia was on the phone with a friend. Sarah was reading. And I was pacing the kitchen, anxiety spiking, every instinct screaming to call everyone to the table, to restore order, to reimpose control. We finally ate at 6:47, 47 minutes late, and nothing bad happened. The food was fine. The conversation was actually better than usual, more relaxed, less rushed. No one died. The world didn't end. But my anxiety during those 47 minutes had been intense, physical, almost unbearable. This is what Dr. Reynolds meant about it feeling like dying. Letting go of control felt like free-falling with no safety net. How was that? Sarah asked after dinner in the kitchen while we cleaned up. Terrifying. But we survived. Yeah, we did. How do you feel now? I thought about it. Exhausted, but also maybe a little lighter? Like I put down something heavy, even if just for 47 minutes. That's progress, Julian. Real progress. At my next therapy session, I told Dr. Reynolds about the dinner experiment. How did it feel? She asked. Like I was going to have a panic attack, like something terrible would happen because I wasn't controlling the timing. But nothing terrible happened. We just ate dinner a little later. And what does that teach you? That maybe the terrible things I'm afraid of aren't as likely as I think they are. That maybe my anxiety about losing control is worse than actually losing control. Exactly. Your brain has been trained to believe that control equals safety, but that's a false equation. Control doesn't actually make you safe. It just makes you feel like you're doing something to prevent danger. When you let go of control and nothing bad happens, your brain starts to learn that maybe you can be okay without controlling everything. But sometimes bad things do happen. My childhood, bad things happened because my father wasn't in control. Yes. Bad things happened because your father was irresponsible and unreliable. But you're not him. Your family's situation isn't your childhood situation. And more importantly, bad things can happen whether you're controlling or not. The project at work failed despite all your control, right? Right. So control doesn't actually prevent bad things. It just exhausts you while giving you the illusion that you're preventing them. Real security doesn't come from control. It comes from resilience. From knowing you can handle whatever comes. From trusting that you're not alone in managing life's challenges. You mean trusting God? If that's your framework, yes. Or trusting your spouse, your community, your own inner resources. The point is, you're trying to carry weights you were never meant to carry alone, and it's crushing you. That week, I tried letting go of other small things. I let Emma choose her own extracurricular activities without my approval. She signed up for the musical she'd wanted to do. I let Olivia arrange her own study schedule instead of dictating homework time. I let Sarah make a financial decision without consulting me first. Each time, the anxiety was intense. Each time, I had to sit with the discomfort of not controlling. Each time, I had to practice trusting that things would be okay, even if I wasn't managing every detail. And each time, things were okay, not perfect. Not exactly as I would have arranged them, but okay. At work, the project failure was being dealt with. My boss had brought in another manager to co-lead the rebuild. At first, I resented it, saw it as punishment, as evidence that I'd failed. But then I noticed something. Sharing the responsibility actually made things easier. The other manager caught things I missed, saw solutions I hadn't considered, and the team responded better to having two leaders instead of one micromanager. "You seem different," my colleague Marcus said one day. "Less intense. What changed?" "I'm trying to control less, trying to trust more. It's not going well, but I'm trying. I can tell. The team's noticed too. They're less afraid of making mistakes around you. That's good. People do better work when they're not terrified of getting every detail wrong." The words stung, but I knew they were true. My control had created a culture of fear. And fear doesn't lead to good work. It leads to paralysis, to playing it safe, to waiting for the controller to make every decision. 2 weeks after starting therapy, something unexpected happened. Emma came to me after school, nervous but determined. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something. I got asked to prom." My immediate instinct was to interrogate. "Who's the boy? Do I know his family? What are his grades? What time will you be home? What are the safety protocols?" But I caught myself. This was one of those moments Dr. Reynolds had talked about, where I could choose control or trust. "Tell me about him," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "His name is Tyler. He's in my English class. He's nice, Dad. Respectful. Good student. And I really want to go." "Okay. Okay, just okay? Yeah, you're 16, you're responsible. You know how to make good choices. So, okay." She stared at me, suspicious. "Are you sure you're my father? The real Julian Carter would have 1,000 questions and probably say no." The real Julian Carter is trying to change, to trust his daughter instead of trying to control her life. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She hugged me, the first real hug she'd initiated in months. "Thank you, Dad. Thank you for trying." After she left, I sat there feeling a mix of terror and pride. Terror because I'd just agreed to let my teenage daughter go to prom with a boy I didn't know. Pride because I'd chosen trust over control, relationship over fear. That evening, Sarah pulled me aside. "Emma told me what happened, about prom, about how you responded. I'm terrified I made the wrong choice. You made the right choice. Not because prom is risk-free, it's not, but because you trusted her. You gave her autonomy. You treated her like a person capable of making decisions instead of a variable you have to control. That's what she needs from you. That's what we all need from you. What if something goes wrong? Then we'll handle it, together, as a family. But Julian, you can't prevent every possible bad thing by controlling every possible variable. You'll just exhaust yourself trying, and you'll miss the actual relationship while you're busy trying to control the circumstances." Later that week, I had what Dr. Reynolds called a breakthrough moment. I was at work and a critical decision needed to be made on the rebuild project. The old me would have made it unilaterally, convinced that only I could make the right choice. But instead, I called a team meeting. Here's the situation, I told them. We need to decide between two approaches. I have opinions, but I want to hear from all of you. What do you think? At first, they were silent, unused to being asked, waiting for me to just tell them what to do. I'm serious, I said. I don't have all the answers. And even if I did, this works better if we're making decisions together instead of me making them for you. So talk to me. What do you think we should do? Slowly, they started offering opinions, perspectives I hadn't considered, insights I'd missed. And together, we came to a decision that was better than anything I would have chosen alone. After the meeting, Marcus pulled me aside. That was good, Julian. Really good. The team needed that, needed to feel like their input mattered, needed to feel trusted. I'm learning that control isn't the same as leadership, that trusting people is actually more effective than micromanaging them. Better late than never, man. That Sunday, we went to church again. I actually listened this time instead of just mentally planning the week ahead. The sermon was about Peter walking on water. How he was fine as long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, but started sinking when he looked at the waves and got afraid. Peter had to choose, the pastor said. Trust Jesus or trust his own ability to control the situation. He couldn't do both. And when he chose control, when he looked at the circumstances instead of at Jesus, that's when he started to sink. The words hit me hard. That was my story. I'd been trying to control the waves instead of trusting Jesus, trying to manage circumstances instead of trusting the one who could walk on water. After church, I did something I'd never done before. I stayed for the prayer time. A small group gathered at the front, and a lay minister prayed with people individually. When he got to me, I said, I need prayer for letting go of control, for trusting God instead of trying to manage everything myself. He prayed for me. And as he did, I felt something break open inside me, not dramatically, just a gentle cracking, a loosening of the tight grip I'd held on my life for so long. God is saying to you, the minister said, the weight of control is not yours, but mine. You can rest. You can trust. I am holding what you cannot hold. Those were the exact words from the sermon 2 weeks ago, the words I couldn't shake. And hearing them again in prayer, directly spoken over me, it felt like God was confirming something, that this journey I was on, this painful letting go of control, was exactly where he wanted me to be. When I got home, I found Sarah and the girls in the living room. Can we talk, all of us? They exchanged worried glances but gathered around me. I need to apologize to you, to all three of you. I've been trying to control your lives instead of trusting you. I've been suffocating you with my anxiety and my need to manage everything, and I've been doing it because I was afraid of chaos, afraid of loss, afraid of being like my father. But my control has hurt you, has hurt us, and I'm sorry. Dad, Emma started, but I held up my hand. Let me finish. I'm in therapy now. I'm working on this. But I want you to know, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to slip back into control sometimes. This is hard for me, but I'm trying. I'm trying to trust God, to trust you, to let go of this weight I've been carrying, and I need your patience while I learn how to do that. Sarah was crying. Emma and Olivia were crying. I was crying. We love you, Dad, Olivia said. We just want you to be okay. We want us to be okay. We want to breathe. I want that too, for all of us. We sat there together, and for the first time in years, it felt like we were actually a family, instead of just people following my controlled script. That night, after everyone was in bed, I went out to our backyard and looked at the stars. The vastness of the universe, the complexity of creation, the billions of variables that somehow all worked together. It all existed without my control. It had existed long before me and would exist long after me, and in that moment I felt how small I was, how limited, how absurd it was that I thought I could control even my tiny corner of existence when God was holding galaxies in place. Okay, God, I whispered. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to let go completely, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to put down the weight of control and let you carry it. I'm willing to trust you with my family, my work, my life. Teach me how. Show me how. Because I can't keep living the way I've been living. It's killing me. It's killing us. So, I surrender. Not perfectly, not completely, but as much as I'm able right now. I surrender. The stars didn't answer. The night was quiet, but inside something shifted. The weight I'd been carrying, it felt lighter, not gone but looser, like I'd been clenching my fists around it and was finally beginning to open my hands. This was just the beginning. I knew that. The journey from control to trust would take time, would require practice, would involve setbacks and struggles, but I'd started. I'd taken the first steps. I'd admitted I couldn't carry this weight alone. And that admission, painful as it was, felt like freedom. The weight of control was not mine, but God's. And I was learning, slowly and imperfectly, to let Him carry it. 3 weeks into my journey of letting go, I faced my biggest test yet. A test that would show me just how deep my control issues went and how hard the work of surrender really was. It started with a phone call on a Wednesday afternoon. My mother, who I'd been estranged from for 5 years after a fight about how I was raising my daughters, was in the hospital. Heart attack. She was stable, but the doctors said it had been serious. My sister Karen was calling to let me know. "Julian, I know you two haven't been speaking, but she's asking for you. She wants to see you." My first instinct was to refuse. My mother and I had fought because she'd criticized my parenting, specifically my control. She told me I was suffocating my daughters the same way our father had suffocated us with his chaos. I'd been furious. We'd said terrible things to each other, and I'd cut her off completely, convinced I was protecting my family from her judgment. But now, 3 weeks into therapy, 3 weeks into learning about control as a trauma response, I could see the fight differently. My mother hadn't been wrong. She'd been trying to warn me, and I'd rejected her warning because it threatened my sense of control. "I'll come," I told Karen. "Tell her I'll be there tomorrow." That night I told Sarah about the call. "I need to go to Phoenix, see my mother in the hospital." "I think that's good. You need to reconcile with her before it's too late." "I don't know if I can. We said such horrible things to each other." "You've been learning to apologize, to admit when you're wrong. This is a chance to practice that with your mother." The next morning I flew to Phoenix. Karen picked me up from the airport. We hadn't talked much since the estrangement. She'd been caught in the middle, trying to maintain relationships with both me and our mother. "How is she?" I asked. "Physically recovering, emotionally scared. She thought she was going to die, Julian. And she's been carrying regret about your fight for 5 years. She wants to make things right before it's too late. I want that too. I just don't know how." At the hospital, I walked into my mother's room, feeling like a child again. She looked small in the hospital bed, fragile in a way I'd never seen her. When she saw me, tears filled her eyes. "Julian, you came." "Of course I came, Mom. I wasn't sure you would. After everything I said, after everything you said." I sat in the chair beside her bed. "Mom, I need to apologize for how I reacted 5 years ago, for cutting you off, for refusing to hear what you were trying to tell me." "What was I trying to tell you?" "That I was controlling my family, the way Dad controlled us with his chaos. That I was hurting my daughters with my need to manage everything. You were right. I just couldn't hear it then, because it threatened my entire way of being." My mother reached for my hand. "I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was trying to help. I could see you drowning in the need to control everything, and I knew where it came from. I knew you were trying so hard not to be like your father, that you'd become controlling in a different way. But you couldn't hear it. I couldn't. But I can now. I'm in therapy, working on it, learning to let go of control, learning that trying to manage everything is actually making things worse, not better." "What changed? What made you finally see it?" "Everything fell apart. Work failed. Sarah almost left me. Emma had a breakdown. And I realized that all my control wasn't preventing disaster. It was causing it. So I got help. started learning about why I'm like this, started practicing letting go. And how's it going? It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Every time I let go of control, I feel like I'm going to die, like something terrible will happen. But I'm learning that the terrible thing I'm afraid of is less likely than I think, and that I can survive uncertainty without controlling it. My mother squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. It takes courage to face this, to admit you need to change. Your father never could. He just kept creating chaos and blaming everyone else for it. We talked for an hour. About the estrangement, about my childhood, about how my father's unreliability had shaped me, about how she'd tried to hold things together but couldn't, about how we'd both been damaged by his chaos but in different ways. I became hyper-responsible, I said, controlling. The opposite of him, but still shaped by him, still letting his chaos dictate how I lived. And I became passive, accepting, letting chaos happen because I couldn't control it anyway. We were both reacting to him instead of choosing our own path. I'm trying to choose my own path now, trying to trust God instead of trying to be God, trying to let go of weights I was never meant to carry. Before I left, my mother said something that shook me. Julian, there's something I need to tell you. About your father. What about him? He tried to contact you last year, wrote you a letter, asked me to give it to you, but I didn't because we weren't speaking, and I didn't know how to reach you. My stomach clenched. What did the letter say? He's dying. Cancer. He wanted to apologize, to try to make amends before it's too late. I still have the letter if you want it. Everything in me wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain the wall I'd built between me and my father 20 years ago. But I thought about what Dr. Reynolds had said. Control is about avoiding pain, and what was avoiding my father, except another form of control? I'll take it, I said. Karen gave me the letter before driving me to the airport. I didn't open it until I was on the plane home. Hands shaking, heart racing, I unfolded the paper and read my father's words. Julian, I know I have no right to ask you to read this. I know I was a terrible father. I know I hurt you with my drinking, my irresponsibility, my chaos. I've been sober for 10 years now, working the steps, making amends where I can. But I never tried to reach out to you because I didn't think you'd want to hear from me. Then I got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, 6 months to live, they're saying, and I realized I'm running out of time to tell you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for the childhood you had, for the fear and instability and pain. You deserve better. You deserved a father who was present and reliable and strong. Instead, you got me, and I can't change that. But I want you to know, I see what I did. I understand how it hurt you, and I'm sorry. If you're willing to talk before I die, I'd like that. But if you're not, I understand. Either way, I needed you to know I'm sorry, and I'm proud of the man you've become despite having me as a father. I read the letter 3 times on the plane. Each time, feeling a mix of anger, grief, and something else I couldn't quite name. My father was dying, wanted to reconcile, and I had to decide whether to let him. Everything in my trauma-formed brain said, protect yourself, control the situation by refusing contact, keep the wall up, don't let him hurt you again. But another voice, quieter, newer, from that place inside me that was learning to trust, said, this isn't about control. This is about forgiveness, about letting go, about not letting his past chaos continue to dictate your present choices. When I got home, Sarah could see the turmoil on my face. What happened? I showed her the letter. My father wants to reconcile. He's dying, and I don't know what to do. What does your gut tell you? My gut tells me to protect myself, to refuse, to maintain control by keeping him out of my life. And your heart? What does your heart tell you? I thought about it, really thought about it. My heart says, this is a chance to break the cycle, to choose forgiveness over control, to let go of the weight of anger I've been carrying for 20 years. But I'm scared he'll hurt me again, scared I'll regret opening that door. What did Dr. Reynolds say about fear? That it's often about trying to control outcomes, that we can't prevent all pain by avoiding risk. That sometimes we have to move toward the thing we're afraid of and trust that we can handle whatever happens. So what are you going to do? I took a deep breath. I'm going to call him. I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to practice letting go of control by opening myself to the possibility of reconciliation, even though it terrifies me. The next day, I called the number my father had included in the letter. He answered on the second ring. Hello? His voice was the same, but weaker, older. I hadn't heard it in 20 years. Dad? It's Julian. Silence. Then a choked sound. Julian. Oh God, Julian. You called. I got your letter. Mom gave it to me. I'm willing to talk if you still want to. I want to. I want to so much. Julian, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. For the childhood you had. For not being the father you needed. For all of it. And just like that, 20 years of anger started to crack, not disappear. Anger that deep doesn't vanish instantly, but crack, let light in, create space for something other than just pain. We talked for an hour. He told me about getting sober, about the work he'd done to understand his addiction, about the amends he'd been making. I told him about my control issues, about therapy, about learning that I'd become the opposite of him, but was still shaped by him. You tried so hard not to be me, he said, and I don't blame you. But son, you don't have to carry that weight anymore. You don't have to control everything to prove you're different from me. You already are different. You're a good father. A good man. You don't have to earn that by being perfect. His words hit something deep. I'd spent 30 years trying to prove I wasn't him, trying to control every variable to demonstrate that I was reliable where he'd been chaotic. But he was right. I didn't need to prove it. I already was different. And the controlling was about fear, not about truth. After we hung up, I sat with what had just happened. I'd faced one of my biggest fears, reconnecting with my father, and I'd survived. More than survived, something had shifted. Some weight I'd been carrying had been put down. At therapy that week, I told Dr. Reynolds about both conversations, with my mother and with my father. How do you feel? She asked. Lighter, scared, uncertain, but lighter. Like I've been carrying resentment and anger for 20 years, and I'm finally starting to put it down. That's what forgiveness does. It doesn't erase the past or excuse the harm, but it releases you from having to carry the weight of it. You're choosing to let go of something heavy so you can move forward, less burdened. Is that what surrendering control is about too? Not just about outcomes and circumstances, but about releasing the weight of trying to manage everything? Exactly. Control is exhausting because it requires constant vigilance, constant management, constant responsibility for things you can't actually control. Surrender is putting down that weight and trusting that you'll be okay even when you're not managing everything. But how do I know when to act and when to surrender? How do I know what's mine to handle and what's God's to carry? That's the lifelong question. Here's a simple guideline. You're responsible for your own choices, your own responses, your own actions. Everything else, other people's choices, outcomes you can't control, circumstances you can't predict, that's not yours to carry. You can influence, you can participate, but you can't control. And trying to control what isn't yours to control creates suffering. That week, I practiced applying that principle. At work, I focused on my own performance and let go of trying to control my team's every decision. At home, I focused on my own behavior and let go of trying to control my daughter's every choice. With my father, I focused on my own willingness to forgive and let go of trying to control whether he'd change or hurt me again. And slowly, very slowly, I started to feel the difference. The anxiety was still there, but less intense. The need to control still arose, but I was learning to recognize it and choose differently. The weight I'd been carrying was still heavy, but I was learning to share it instead of bearing it alone. One evening, Emma came to me with news. Dad, I got the lead role in the musical. Annie, I'm playing Annie. My immediate instinct was to worry. The time commitment, the rehearsals, how it would affect her grades, her college applications, all the variables I couldn't control. But I caught myself. Emma, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. You're not going to tell me all the ways it might be too much? All the things I need to be careful about? No, you're capable of managing your own commitments. If it becomes too much, you'll adjust. I trust you." She hugged me tight. "Thank you for trusting me, Dad. It means everything." After she left, I sat there feeling the weight of what had just happened. I'd let my daughter make her own choice and deal with her own consequences. I'd trusted instead of controlled, and it hadn't killed me. It had actually brought us closer together. That night, praying before bed, I said, "God, I'm learning. Slowly, imperfectly. But I'm learning to put down the weight of control and let you carry it. I'm learning that I don't have to manage everything to keep my family safe. I'm learning that control is an illusion and trust is the only real security. Thank you for being patient with me, for teaching me, for holding what I'm learning to release." And in the quiet that followed, I felt that presence again, that peace, that assurance that I wasn't alone in this work, that God was with me, teaching me, holding me up as I learned to let go. The weight of control was not mine, but His. And I was learning, one small choice at a time, one deliberate surrender at a time, to trust that truth. Even when everything in me wanted to grab control back, even when letting go felt impossible, even when trusting felt like dying, I was learning, and that was enough. 6 weeks into my journey of letting go, I was learning that surrender wasn't a one-time decision. It was a daily practice, sometimes an hourly practice. Every day presented new opportunities to choose control or trust, to grip tightly or open my hands, to carry the weight alone or let God hold it with me. Some days were easier than others. Some days I managed to let go with relative peace. Other days, the anxiety was so intense I could barely function. Dr. Reynolds had warned me it would be like this. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Progress wasn't linear. Healing didn't happen in a straight line. The real test came when Olivia, my younger daughter who'd always been the easy child, the one I worried about less, came home one afternoon with news that sent my control instincts into overdrive. "Dad, I need to tell you something. I've been struggling with anxiety for about a year now, and it's been getting worse." My immediate reaction was panic, mixed with guilt. How had I not noticed? How had I missed that my daughter was suffering? And then, right behind that, what did I do wrong? How did I fail to prevent this? "Tell me what's been happening," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, even though my heart was racing. "I have panic attacks, usually at night, sometimes during school. My chest gets tight, I can't breathe, I feel like I'm dying. I've been trying to hide it because I didn't want to worry you. But it's getting worse, and I think I need help." Sarah, who'd been listening from the doorway, came in and sat beside Olivia. "Honey, how long has this been going on?" "About a year, since freshman year started. Everything felt so overwhelming. The pressure to get good grades, to get into a good college, to be perfect. And I kept thinking, if I'm not perfect, if I mess up, Dad will be disappointed. The whole family will fall apart. It's all on me to keep things together." Her words hit me like a physical blow. She'd internalized my control, my anxiety, my belief that perfection was the only way to prevent disaster, and it was destroying her. "Olivia," I said, my voice breaking, "that's not true. None of that is on you. And I'm so sorry I made you feel like it was. I'm so sorry my control issues have infected you like this. It's not your fault, Dad." "It is. Not entirely, but partly. I've been modeling anxiety and control for you your whole life, teaching you that if you just manage every variable, everything will be okay. But that's not true, and it's making us both sick." We talked for an hour about her anxiety, about my anxiety, about how generational patterns get passed down unless we actively work to break them, about how she needed professional help, just like I'd gotten professional help. That evening, after Olivia was in bed, Sarah and I sat in the living room processing what we'd learned. "I gave her my anxiety," I said. "I taught her to be afraid of things not being perfect, to think she had to control everything to keep the family safe, and now she's suffering because of it. Julian, you didn't do this intentionally. You were doing the best you could with the tools you had, and now you're getting new tools. We can help her get new tools too." But what if I've damaged her permanently? What if my control issues have scarred her in ways we can't fix? Sarah took my hands. Listen to yourself. That's the control talking. That's you trying to manage outcomes you can't control. We'll get Olivia help. We'll support her. We'll learn together as a family. But you can't control whether she heals perfectly or how long it takes. You can only control your own response, which is to get her the help she needs and to continue working on your own issues so you don't keep modeling anxiety for her. She was right. This was another opportunity to practice surrender, to let go of trying to control my daughter's healing journey, to trust that with support she'd find her way, to forgive myself for the mistakes I'd made while doing the best I knew how. The next day, I called Dr. Reynolds. My daughter just told me she's been having panic attacks for a year, and I think it's because she learned anxiety from me. I need help knowing how to support her without trying to control her healing. First, take a breath. You're catastrophizing, jumping to worst-case scenarios and taking full responsibility for something that has multiple causes. Yes, children learn from parents, but anxiety also has genetic components, environmental factors beyond the family, individual brain chemistry. You're part of the picture, but not the whole picture. But I modeled control and perfectionism for her. I taught her that mistakes were unacceptable, and now you're changing. You're showing her a different way. That's powerful modeling too. She's seeing you acknowledge your issues, get help, work on change. That teaches her it's okay to struggle and to ask for help. That's valuable. So what do? Get her connected with a therapist who specializes in teen anxiety. Support her in attending sessions. Don't interrogate her about what she discusses in therapy. That's her private space. And keep doing your own work. The best thing you can do for her is to continue healing yourself. We found a therapist for Olivia, Dr. Sarah Patel, who specialized in adolescent anxiety and had great reviews. Olivia's first appointment was that Thursday. I drove her there, fighting every instinct to go in with her, to monitor the session, to make sure she was getting the right help. "You okay?" I asked as we pulled up to the office. Nervous, but also relieved. I'm tired of feeling like this. I know that feeling. But Liv, I want you to know, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to hold everything together. You don't have to manage everyone else's emotions or outcomes. You just have to be you, messy, imperfect, human you. That's enough. That's more than enough. She hugged me before getting out of the car. Thanks, Dad, for getting help, for changing, for showing me it's okay to not be okay. While she was in her session, I sat in the car and prayed. God, I don't know how to help her without trying to control her healing. I don't know how to support her without micromanaging. Teach me how to love her without suffocating her. Teach me how to be present without being controlling. Teach me how to trust you with her healing the way I'm learning to trust you with everything else. When Olivia came out, she looked lighter, not fixed. Healing didn't work that fast, but less burdened, like she'd put down something heavy just by admitting she needed help. "How was it?" I asked. "Good, really good. Dr. Patel gets it. She said a lot of what I'm feeling is normal, and she's going to teach me tools for managing the panic attacks." "That's great, honey." "Dad?" "She also said you might want to do some family therapy together, to work on communication and boundaries and stuff. Would you be okay with that?" Everything in my old self wanted to refuse. Family therapy felt like admitting our family was broken, but I thought about what I'd been learning. Asking for help isn't weakness. Working on relationships isn't failure. Being willing to be vulnerable and learn together is strength. Yes, absolutely. Let's do that. That week, work presented another opportunity to practice surrender. The rebuild project, the one that had failed inspection, was ready for re-inspection. Everything hinged on this. If we passed, we could finish the project and salvage the client relationship. If we failed again, we'd likely lose the client and take enormous financial losses. The old me would have been there for every moment of the inspection, hovering, checking, making sure everything was perfect. But I was learning that my presence didn't actually ensure success, that outcomes weren't within my control, only my response to those outcomes. The morning of the inspection, my co-manager Marcus called. "You coming down to the site?" "No, I trust you and the team to handle it. Let me know how it goes." "You sure? This is a big deal." "I'm sure. You've got this. And whether we pass or fail, we'll deal with it together." After I hung up, I felt the familiar anxiety rising, the urge to rush to the site, to take control, to make sure everything was perfect. But I sat with the discomfort, breathed through it, reminded myself I can't control this outcome. I can only trust that the work was done well and accept whatever result comes. 3 hours later, Marcus called. We passed. Clean inspection. No issues. Relief flooded through me. But something else too, a realization that my absence hadn't caused failure, that trusting the team had actually worked, that letting go of control hadn't led to disaster. That's great news. Thank you for handling it. Julian, can I tell you something? The team worked better today knowing you trusted them. There was less stress, less fear of making mistakes. Everyone was more confident because they knew you believed in them. That's what good leadership looks like. And after the call, I sat at my desk thinking about what he'd said. For years I thought control was leadership, that managing every detail was what made me a good manager. But real leadership was trust, was empowering people, was creating space for them to succeed on their own, rather than succeeding only when I was micromanaging them. That evening I went to a men's group at church, something I'd started attending a few weeks earlier. 8 guys meeting weekly to talk about faith, life, struggles. I'd been hesitant to join, uncomfortable with vulnerability. But Dr. Reynolds had encouraged it. You need community. You need other people who can support you and hold you accountable. That night, the topic was surrender. The leader asked, "What are you holding on to that God is asking you to release?" I shared about my control issues, about trying to manage everything, about the journey of learning to let go, about how hard it was, about how it felt like dying every time I released control. One of the other men, James, a guy about my age, spoke up. "I get that. I'm a recovering alcoholic, 10 years sober, and the hardest part of recovery wasn't stopping drinking. It was admitting I couldn't control my drinking, that I was powerless, that I needed to surrender to a higher power. Everything in me fought that, but it was only when I finally let go, really let go, that I found freedom." "How did you do it? How did you actually let go?" "The 12 steps taught me. You do it one day at a time, one moment at a time. You don't try to surrender everything forever. You just surrender this moment, this decision, this temptation. And then the next moment you surrender again, over and over, until surrender becomes a practice instead of a one-time event." His words resonated deeply. That's what I was learning too. Surrender wasn't a destination, it was a direction. Not a single choice, but a series of choices. Not perfection, but practice. After the meeting, James pulled me aside. "Hey, you want to grab coffee sometime? Sounds like we're fighting similar battles. Might help to talk it through with someone who gets it." "Yeah, I'd like that." We exchanged numbers and I drove home feeling less alone. I'd spent 30 years isolating, thinking I had to carry everything myself. But I was learning that community was part of surrender, letting other people help carry what I couldn't carry alone. The next Sunday, our family attended church together, but this time, when the pastor invited people forward for prayer, I didn't hesitate. I went up, Sarah and both girls with me. "We need prayer for our family," I told the prayer minister, "for healing from control and anxiety, for learning to trust God instead of trying to be God, for breaking generational patterns, for becoming a family that can breathe instead of one that's suffocating under the weight of trying to be perfect." The minister prayed over us, and as he did, I felt something shift, not just in me, but in all of us, like we were releasing something together, like we were choosing a different path as a family, not just as individuals. "God is saying," the minister spoke, "the weight you've been carrying was never yours to carry. I've been holding it all along. You just couldn't see my hands because you were gripping so tightly. Open your hands. Let me hold what you've been trying to hold. Trust that I won't drop it. Trust that I've got you. Trust that I've got your daughters. Trust that I've got your marriage. Trust that I've got your work. Trust that I've got your father. Trust that I've got everything you've been white-knuckling. Let go. Let me carry it. Tears were streaming down my face, down Sarah's face, down both girls' faces. We stood there together, crying and releasing and choosing to trust. That week I had my first family therapy session with Olivia and Dr. Patel. Sarah joined us too. It was awkward at first, talking openly about our family dynamics, about my control, about how it had affected everyone. But Dr. Patel created safe space for honesty. She helped us see patterns we'd fallen into. She taught us new ways of communicating. She showed us how to establish boundaries while still being connected. "Julian," she said at one point, "I want you to try something. When Olivia shares something with you, a problem, a struggle, a concern, your job is just to listen, not to fix it, not to solve it, not to manage it, just to listen and validate her feelings. Can you try that?" "I can try, but it's hard. My instinct when someone I love is struggling is to fix it for them." "I know, but fixing isn't what she needs. She needs to learn to solve her own problems. And she can't learn that if you're always solving them for her. Your job is to be a supportive presence, not a rescuer." It was simple advice, but profound. I'd been trying to rescue everyone from discomfort, from struggle, from problems. But in doing so, I'd prevented them from developing their own problem-solving muscles. I'd kept them dependent on me instead of helping them become capable on their own. "Liv," I said, "I'm sorry I've been trying to fix everything for you, instead of trusting you to figure things out. I'm sorry I've made you feel like you couldn't handle challenges on your own. From now on, I'm going to practice just being present with you instead of trying to control your experience." "Thanks, Dad. That's what I need. Not you fixing everything, but you believing I can handle things." Walking out of that session, I felt like I'd learned something essential. Love didn't mean controlling. It meant trusting. It meant being present without taking over. It meant supporting without rescuing. It meant holding space for someone else's struggle without trying to eliminate it for them. That night, I added to my journal a practice Dr. Reynolds had recommended for tracking my progress. Day 42 of learning to surrender. Today I learned that I don't have to fix everyone's problems. That being a good father doesn't mean preventing my daughters from ever struggling. It means teaching them they can handle struggle. It means modeling how to face challenges with faith instead of fear. It means trusting them to grow through difficulty instead of trying to eliminate difficulty for them. God, I'm still learning, still practicing, still choosing surrender over control, trust over fear, openness over gripping. Some days are easier than others, but I'm changing. My family is healing, and that's enough for today. The weight of control is not mine, but yours. I'm learning to believe that. I'm learning to live like that, one choice at a time, one surrender at a time, one moment of trust at a time. Thank you for being patient with me, for teaching me, for holding what I'm learning to release. I trust you with my family. I trust you with my work. I trust you with my father. I trust you with Olivia's healing. I trust you with Emma's musical. I trust you with Sarah's heart. I trust you with my own journey, or at least I'm learning to trust. And that learning is the work. That's the journey. That's the transformation. One day at a time. Just like James said, one surrender at a time. I closed the journal and sat in the quiet. And in that quiet I felt it again. That peace that passed understanding, that assurance that I wasn't alone, that God was carrying what I was learning to release. The weight of control was not mine, but His. And I was learning, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely, to live in that truth. 3 months into my journey of surrender, I received a call that tested everything I'd been learning. My father's condition had worsened dramatically. He'd been moved to hospice. The doctors said it could be days, maybe a week at most. My sister Karen called early on a Saturday morning. "Julian, if you want to see him before he passes, you need to come now." I booked a flight for that afternoon. Sarah offered to come with me, but I told her to stay with the girls. This was something I needed to do alone, something I needed to face without trying to control through the presence of others. On the flight to Phoenix, I thought about the past 3 months, about the phone calls with my father. We'd talked every week since that first conversation, about the apologies he'd made, the stories he'd shared about his sobriety journey, the pride he'd expressed in the man I'd become. But I also thought about the years of pain, the childhood chaos, the fear and instability, the vow I'd made to never be like him, the control I'd developed in response to his unreliability. And now he was dying, and I had to decide, would I hold on to the anger and pain, or would I let it go? Would I control our final encounter by keeping my walls up, or would I surrender to whatever this goodbye needed to be? When I arrived at the hospice facility, Karen was waiting in the lobby. She looked exhausted. She'd been shouldering most of the caregiving burden during his decline. "How is he?" I asked. "In and out of consciousness. Mostly sleeping, but he's been asking for you. Every time he wakes up, he asks if you're here yet. Has he been in pain?" "They're managing it well. He's peaceful. Just ready to go, I think. He said everything he needed to say, made all the amends he could make. He's at peace with dying." We walked to his room together. I wasn't prepared for what I saw. My father, who'd always seemed larger than life, chaotic and overwhelming, looked so small in the hospice bed, thin, frail, barely recognizable. But when he opened his eyes and saw me, his face lit up with a smile. "Julian, you came." "Of course I came, Dad." Karen gave us privacy, and I sat in the chair beside his bed. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. 20 years of estrangement, 3 months of reconciliation, and now this, the final conversation. "I'm glad you're here," he said, his voice weak. "I didn't know if you would come, didn't know if I deserved it after everything. I'm here because I chose to forgive, not because you deserved it, but because I needed to, because holding on to anger was killing me just like your drinking killed our relationship. You learned that, did you? That forgiveness is for you, not for the other person." "I'm learning it, still learning it every day." "That's good, that's real good, son." He paused, gathering strength. "I need to tell you something before I go, something I should have told you years ago." "What is it?" "I'm proud of you. Not just proud, grateful. You broke the cycle. You didn't let my chaos define you. You became a good man, a good father. You gave your daughters the stability I never gave you. That takes strength, that takes courage, and I'm proud of you for it." His words hit something deep. I'd spent 30 years trying to prove I wasn't him, trying to control everything to demonstrate I was different, and here he was at the end of his life telling me he saw it. He knew it, he was proud of it. "Dad, I need to tell you something too. I became the opposite of you, but I became just as broken. I controlled everything because you controlled nothing. I suffocated my family with rigid order because you suffocated us with chaos. Different methods, same damage. But you're fixing it now. That's what matters. You saw the problem and you're fixing it. I never did that. I just kept destroying and blaming everyone else. You're fixing it now too. The sobriety, the amends, the work you've done, that counts. Maybe, but it's late. Too late to undo most of the damage. It's not too late for this, for us, for reconciliation, for peace between us before you go. That matters, Dad. That counts for something." Tears slid down his weathered face. "It counts for everything. I get to die knowing my son forgave me, knowing we made peace, knowing I didn't completely destroy the most important relationship in my life. That's grace, Julian. That's pure grace." We talked for another hour, about his childhood, about what made him turn to alcohol, about the pain he'd been trying to numb, about my childhood, about how his chaos had shaped me, about the control I'd developed to survive it. And slowly, through that conversation, I began to understand something profound. My father and I weren't opposites. We were two sides of the same coin, both responding to pain with dysfunction, both trying to manage overwhelming feelings through destructive patterns. His pattern was chaos and addiction. Mine was control and anxiety. Different expressions, same route. Dad, can I pray for you? I'd like that. Haven't prayed much in my life, but at the end seems like a good time to start. I took his hand, thin and weak now, and prayed. God, thank you for my father. Thank you for the man he's become through sobriety. Thank you for the reconciliation you've given us. Thank you for grace that covers our mistakes and redeems our pain. As Dad prepares to meet you face to face, give him peace. Take away any fear. Let him know he's forgiven. Let him know he's loved. Let him know he did more good than harm in the end. Receive him into your presence with joy, and help me to continue the healing work he started. Help me to break the generational patterns completely. Help me to give my daughters the stability and freedom I'm learning to live in. In Jesus' name, amen. When I finished, my father squeezed my hand weakly. Thank you, son, for that prayer, for coming, for forgiving, for everything. I stayed with him through the evening, into the night. Karen brought me dinner, and we took turns sitting with him. Sometimes he was awake and we'd talk. Sometimes he slept, and we'd just be present. Around 2 a.m. he woke up and looked at me with unusual clarity. Julian, I need you to promise me something. What is it, Dad? Promise me you'll keep doing the work. Keep learning to let go. Keep choosing trust over control. Don't waste 30 years like I did before you face your issues. You're doing it now. Keep doing it. For your daughters, for your wife, for yourself. I promise, Dad, I promise I'll keep working on it. Good. That's good. He closed his eyes, peaceful. I'm tired now. So tired. But I'm not afraid anymore. I'm ready. It's okay to rest, Dad. It's okay to let go. We'll be okay. I'll be okay. He smiled without opening his eyes. I know you will. You're stronger than I ever was. You always were. Those were the last words he spoke to me. He slipped into unconsciousness shortly after, and by dawn he was gone. Peaceful, pain-free, at rest. I sat with his body for a while after he passed, feeling a strange mix of grief and relief. Grief for the relationship we could have had if he'd gotten sober sooner. Relief that he died at peace, having made amends, having reconciled with me. But more than anything, I felt grateful that we'd had 3 months of honest conversation. Grateful that I'd chosen forgiveness over resentment. Grateful that I'd learned to let go of control, enough to open myself to reconciliation. Karen and I made arrangements for a simple funeral. He'd wanted to be cremated, his ashes scattered in the desert he'd loved. We planned a small memorial service for the following week. When I called Sarah to tell her, she asked, "How are you doing?" "I don't know. I'm sad, but not devastated. I'm at peace, but not unaffected. It's complicated. Death usually is, especially when the relationship was complicated. He made me promise something before he died, made me promise I'd keep doing the work, keep learning to let go of control, keep choosing trust. And will you? Yes, absolutely. That's the best way to honor his memory, to keep breaking the patterns he couldn't break until it was almost too late. The funeral was the following Saturday. Small gathering, Karen and her family, a few people from my father's AA group, my mother who came to pay respects despite their divorce decades ago, and me. One of his AA sponsors spoke. "Your father was one of the most honest people I knew. Not always, but in the end. He didn't make excuses for his addiction, didn't blame others for his choices. He took full responsibility and did the hard work of change. That's rare. That's beautiful. And even though he came to sobriety late, he made those years count. He helped other alcoholics get sober. He made amends where he could. He died at peace with himself and with God. That's all any of us can hope for." When it was my turn to speak, I said, "My father and I had a complicated relationship, 20 years of estrangement. But in his final months, we reconciled. We talked honestly. We forgave each other. And he taught me something important. It's never too late to change. Never too late to face your issues. Never too late to make amends. He lived most of his life controlled by addiction, but he died free. And that freedom, that transformation, that's what I choose to remember." After the service, my mother pulled me aside. "Your father would be proud of how you spoke about him, how you chose grace over bitterness. That's big of you, Julian." I'm learning, Mom. Learning that holding on to anger doesn't hurt the person you're angry at. It hurts you. Learning that forgiveness is freedom. Keep learning, keep growing. Don't make his mistakes or mine. Break the patterns completely. That's what I'm trying to do. Flying home that evening, I thought about my father's final words. His charge to keep doing the work, his pride in the man I'd become, his hope that I'd break the patterns completely. And I realized honoring him meant continuing the journey he'd started too late but finished well. Meant facing my issues now instead of in 30 years. Meant choosing transformation over comfort, growth over stagnation, surrender over control. When I got home, my family was waiting. Sarah, Emma, Olivia, all three of them hugged me at once, holding me while I cried. Not just for my father's death, but for everything, for the childhood I'd had, for the man he'd been and the man he'd become, for the relationship we'd finally had at the end, for the healing that was possible even when it seemed too late. Tell us about him, Emma said. About your dad. We want to know. So I told them stories. About his chaos when I was young, about his sobriety journey, about our reconciliation, about his final words, about how he'd made me promise to keep breaking the patterns. He sounds brave, Olivia said, to face his issues, to change even when it was hard. He was. And that's what I want to be, what I want us all to be. Brave enough to face our issues, brave enough to change, brave enough to break patterns instead of repeating them. That week at therapy, I processed my father's death with Dr. Reynolds. How do you feel about how things ended? She asked. Grateful, sad, but grateful. We had 3 months of honest conversation. We reconciled. He died at peace. That's more than I thought we'd ever have. And what did you learn from him? That control and chaos are 2 sides of the same coin. That we're all responding to pain in dysfunctional ways until we get help. That it's never too late to change, but the sooner you start, the better. That forgiveness is freedom. That making amends matters. That dying at peace is the goal. Not dying with achievements, but dying having done the hard work of becoming whole. Those are profound insights. How will they shape your journey going forward? They remind me why this work matters. Why learning to surrender control isn't just about reducing anxiety. It's about breaking generational patterns. My father's addiction hurt me. My control was hurting my daughters. But we're both, he and I, doing the work to stop the cycle. He did it at the end of his life. I'm doing it in the middle of mine, and my daughters are learning different patterns from the start. That's the goal. That's the point of all of this. At family therapy that week, I shared about my father's death with Olivia and Dr. Patel. What did you learn from your grandfather's story? Dr. Patel asked Olivia. That everyone's fighting battles, that addiction and control and anxiety, they're all ways people try to manage pain, and that getting help is brave, not weak, that changing is possible even when patterns are deep. And how does that relate to your own journey with anxiety? It makes me feel less alone, less broken, like I'm part of a family that struggles but also works on healing. That's better than being in a family that pretends everything is perfect. Dr. Patel turned to me. Julian, how are you doing with not trying to control Olivia's healing process? It's hard. I want to fix her anxiety for her, want to take it away. But I'm learning that's not my job. My job is to support her while she does her own work, to model healthy coping instead of trying to control her experience. That's exactly right. And Olivia, how does it feel when your dad supports you without trying to fix everything? It feels good. It feels like he trusts me, like he believes I can handle this. That makes me more confident that I actually can. That conversation stayed with me. The recognition that my control, even when well-intentioned, communicated lack of trust. But my support without control communicated belief in my daughter's capability. That was the shift I needed to keep making. The next Sunday at church, I found myself drawn to the altar again. Not for big prayer, but just to kneel and be present. To acknowledge that I didn't have to carry everything. To practice surrender in a tangible, physical way. As I knelt there, the words came back, "The weight of control is not yours, but mine." And I prayed, God, I buried my father this week. He died free, free from addiction, free from guilt, free from the weight he'd carried for so long. I want to live free, want to die free, want to spend my years learning to surrender instead of waiting until the end to let go. Teach me, keep teaching me. When I grab for control, remind me it's not mine to hold. When I try to manage what's yours, remind me to release it. When I forget that you're holding everything, remind me I can rest. The weight of control is not mine, but yours. Help me live like I believe that. Help me die having learned that completely. Standing up from the altar, I felt my father's presence, not literally, but spiritually. The sense that he was at peace, that he was cheering me on in this journey, that he was proud of the work I was doing, that he'd started too late, but finished well. I walked back to my family, Sarah, Emma, Olivia, all three of them watching me with love and support, and I knew this was what mattered. Not perfect control, not managed outcomes, but authentic relationship, honest struggle, shared healing. Grace upon grace. The weight of control was not mine, but God's. My father had learned that lesson at the end of his life. I was learning it in the middle of mine, and my daughters would learn it from the beginning of theirs. That was the point. That was the goal. That was the transformation, breaking the patterns, choosing different, living free, one surrender at a time. 4 months after my father's death, I was living differently, not perfectly, not without struggles, but differently. The changes were subtle but real, visible in small moments, daily choices, the spaces between control and trust. I woke up most mornings without immediately reaching for my phone to check work emails. I ate breakfast with my family without mentally planning the day's schedule. I drove to work without the tight anxiety in my chest that used to be my constant companion. The shift was gradual but undeniable. I was learning to live without the crushing weight of trying to control everything. At work, the transformation was visible to everyone. My team had stopped walking on eggshells around me. They made decisions without waiting for my approval. They caught problems and solved them without needing me to micromanage every detail. The team culture has completely changed, my boss said during a review meeting. 6 months ago, everyone was afraid to make a move without your sign-off. Now they're confident, proactive, innovative. Whatever you're doing differently, keep doing it. I stopped trying to control everything, started trusting people to do their jobs, focused on my own responsibilities instead of trying to manage everyone else's. Well, it's working. The rebuild project came in under budget and ahead of schedule. Clients thrilled, teams happy, and you seem lighter, less stressed. He was right, I was lighter. The weight I'd been carrying for 30 years, the weight of trying to manage every variable, prevent every disaster, control every outcome, was slowly being lifted. Not all at once, but piece by piece, surrender by surrender. At home, the changes were even more profound. Emma's musical opened that month. Opening night, I sat in the audience with Sarah and Olivia, watching my daughter shine on stage. The old me would have been anxious about every detail, her performance, the technical elements, whether anything would go wrong. But instead, I just watched, present, enjoying, trusting that whatever happened, it would be okay. She was magnificent, confident, talented, radiant, and after the show, when she found us in the lobby, the hug she gave me was different from the tense, obligatory hugs of the past. You came, and you didn't try to give me notes or tell me what I should have done differently, because you were perfect, and even if you hadn't been, it wouldn't have been my job to fix it. I'm just here to support you, not to manage you. Thank you, Dad, for just being proud instead of being critical. It means everything. Olivia's progress with anxiety was slower but steady. Some weeks were better than others. She still had panic attacks occasionally, but she was learning tools for managing them. And more importantly, she was learning that having anxiety didn't mean she was broken. It just meant she was human and needed support. One evening, she came to me after a particularly hard day. Dad, I had a panic attack at school today, in the middle of chemistry class. It was humiliating. My first instinct was to problem solve, to ask what triggered it, to figure out how to prevent future attacks, to control the situation. But I caught myself. She didn't need me to fix it. She needed me to listen. That sounds really hard. I'm sorry you went through that. You're not going to ask me what caused it, or tell me how to prevent it next time? No, unless you want to talk about that. But my job isn't to fix your anxiety. It's to support you while you work on it. So, how are you feeling now? She started crying. Scared, embarrassed, tired of feeling like this. I pulled her into a hug. I know, anxiety is exhausting. But you're doing the work. You're getting help. You're learning to manage it. That's brave. That takes strength. And I'm proud of you for it. Even though I'm not fixed, you don't need to be fixed. You need to be supported. There's a difference. After she went to bed, Sarah said to me, "That was good, really good. The old you would have tried to solve her anxiety for her, but you just let her feel it and offered presence. That's what she needs." I'm learning, slowly. That love isn't about fixing people or controlling their experiences. It's about being present with them in their struggle. You're doing more than learning it. You're living it, and we're all better for it. That month, I also started leading a men's group at church. 8 guys meeting weekly to talk about control, surrender, and faith. Most of them were dealing with similar issues: the need to manage everything, the anxiety of uncertainty, the exhaustion of carrying weights they weren't meant to carry. "How do you actually let go?" one man asked. "Everyone says, just surrender to God. But what does that practically look like?" "For me," I said, "it's a daily practice. I start each morning by consciously giving things to God. I literally list them out loud. God, I give you my daughters. I give you my marriage. I give you my work. I give you the outcomes I can't control. I give you this day." And then, throughout the day, when I feel the urge to control something, I remind myself, I already gave this to God. It's not mine to control anymore. But doesn't God want us to be responsible, to take action, to manage our lives well? Yes, but there's a difference between responsible action and controlling behavior. Responsible action is doing what's mine to do, making good choices, working hard, being faithful in my responsibilities. Controlling behavior is trying to manage outcomes I can't actually control, other people's choices, circumstances beyond my influence. God wants the first. He doesn't ask for the second. Another man spoke up. "I struggle with this at work. I'm a manager, and I feel like if I'm not controlling everything, I'm not doing my job." I used to think that too, but I learned that real leadership isn't control. It's trust. It's empowering people to do their jobs well instead of micromanaging them. It's focusing on vision and direction instead of trying to manage every detail. When I stopped controlling and started trusting, my team actually performed better. The conversation went on for 2 hours, each man sharing his struggles, each finding permission to admit that the weight of control was crushing him, each learning that surrender wasn't weakness but wisdom. After the meeting, James, my friend from AA, who'd become a close confidant, pulled me aside. "You're good at this. Leading, creating space for honesty. Have you thought about doing this more broadly? Maybe writing about your journey?" Writing, like a book. Yeah, your story, learning to surrender control, breaking generational patterns, choosing trust over fear. It's powerful. Other people need to hear it, especially men. We're taught that control is strength, that surrendering is weakness, but you're living proof that the opposite is true. I hadn't thought about writing, but the idea stayed with me. What if my journey could help others? What if the pain I'd experienced and the healing I was discovering could become a bridge for people walking the same path? That week, I started writing. Not a book exactly, but reflections, stories from my journey, lessons I was learning, practical steps for letting go of control. I wrote about my father's chaos and my response to it, about the cost of control on my family, about Emma's breakdown and Olivia's anxiety, about Sarah's ultimatum, about therapy and surrender, and learning to trust God. I wrote for an hour each evening after the girls went to bed. The words flowed easily. Years of internal processing finally finding external expression. And as I wrote, I realized this wasn't just for others. It was for me too. A way of marking the journey, of remembering where I'd been and how far I'd come, of acknowledging the transformation that was still unfolding. 5 months into the journey, Sarah and I went away for a weekend alone, our first in years. We'd always said we were too busy, couldn't leave the girls, had too many responsibilities, but I was learning that relationship required investment, that marriage needed attention, that letting go of control meant trusting others to handle things while we focused on each other. We drove to the mountains, stayed at a small cabin. No agenda, no schedule, no plan beyond being together. The first day, I struggled. Kept wanting to check in with Emma and Olivia, kept thinking about work projects, kept feeling like I should be doing something productive instead of just being present with Sarah. "You're still controlling," Sarah said gently. "Even here, even now. You're trying to manage things that don't need managing. I know. It's a hard habit to break. What would it look like to fully surrender this weekend? To just be here with me without trying to control anything else?" I thought about it. Then I took out my phone and turned it off, completely off. It would look like this, being unreachable, trusting that Emma and Olivia are fine with Karen, trusting that work can handle 2 days without me, trusting that the world will keep spinning even if I'm not monitoring it. Sarah smiled. "That's brave. Or terrifying. I can't tell the difference anymore." But something shifted when I turned off the phone. Without the option of checking in or controlling from a distance, I had to actually be present, had to actually let go, had to actually trust. We spent the weekend hiking, talking, sitting by the fire. We talked about our marriage, the years I'd controlled everything, the ways it had damaged intimacy, the healing that was happening now that I was learning to surrender. "I feel like I'm getting to know you again," Sarah said. "The real you, not the anxious controller, the man I fell in love with before the control took over. Was I different before? You were. You were spontaneous, playful, present. Then something shifted. I think it was when Emma was born. You became hyper-vigilant, like you couldn't relax because you had to keep everyone safe. And the more you tried to control, the more anxious you became. The more anxious you became, the more you tried to control. It was a vicious cycle. Emma's birth triggered something in me. The responsibility of being a father, the fear of failing like my father failed, the determination to give her everything he didn't give me. But in trying to be the opposite of him, I became just as dysfunctional in a different way. But you're breaking that now. You're learning different. And Julian, I'm so proud of you. This work you're doing, it's hard. It would be easier to stay stuck in your patterns. But you're choosing growth. You're choosing change. You're choosing us over your fear. That conversation opened something between us, an intimacy we hadn't had in years. Not just physical intimacy, though that deepened too, but emotional intimacy, spiritual intimacy, the closeness that comes from being fully known and fully accepted. On the drive home, Sarah said, "I want to tell you something. A year ago, I was planning to leave. I'd talked to a lawyer about divorce. I couldn't live with the control anymore. It was killing me, killing us. I gave you one last chance, the ultimatum, but I didn't actually think you'd change. I thought you'd make promises and then slide back into old patterns. But you didn't. You actually did the work. You actually changed. And that saved our marriage." Her words hit me hard. I'd known things were bad, but I hadn't known how close we'd come to ending, how close my control had come to destroying everything I'd been trying to protect. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm sorry I put you in that position. I'm sorry I almost lost you because I was too afraid to let go. You didn't lose me. You chose different. You chose growth. You chose us. That's what matters. I'll keep choosing us. Every day. I promise." Back home, Emma and Olivia greeted us with excitement. "How was the weekend?" "Perfect," Sarah said. "Your dad actually relaxed. It was a miracle." "Did the house burn down without us?" I asked, half joking. "Nope, we survived." We even managed to feed ourselves and everything," Emma said with exaggerated pride. "I'm impressed and relieved, and learning that you don't need me to manage every detail of your lives. We've been telling you that for years, Dad." "I know. I'm finally starting to listen." That evening, I added to my journal, day 150, 5 months since I started this journey, 5 months of learning to surrender, 5 months of choosing trust over control, faith over fear, openness over gripping. The changes are real. My marriage is healing. My daughters are breathing. My work is thriving. My anxiety is decreasing. My relationships are deepening. And I'm lighter. So much lighter than I was 5 months ago. But I'm also aware that this is ongoing work, not a destination, but a direction, not perfection, but practice. Every day presents new opportunities to choose surrender over control. Every situation tests whether I'll trust or grip. Every challenge asks whether I believe God is holding what I can't hold. And most days, not all days, but most days, I'm choosing well. I'm letting go, I'm trusting, I'm surrendering the weight to the one who was always meant to carry it. The weight of control is not mine, but his. I believe that now, not just intellectually, but experientially. I'm living like it's true, and that living is changing everything. Thank you, God, for not giving up on me, for walking with me through this transformation, for teaching me to release what I was never meant to carry, for being patient with my slow learning and my frequent failures, for holding what I'm learning to surrender. My father learned this at the end of his life. I'm learning it in the middle of mine, and my daughters are learning it from the beginning of theirs. That's the goal, that's the point, that's the legacy I want to leave. Not control passed down, but surrender learned and lived and taught. One day at a time. One choice at a time, one surrender at a time. I closed the journal and sat in the quiet of my home office. Through the window, I could see the mountains in the distance, the same mountains where Sarah and I had just spent the weekend, where I'd turned off my phone and practiced full presence, where I'd learned that letting go didn't lead to disaster, but to deeper connection. And I thought about the men's group I was leading, about the book I was writing, about the family healing that was happening, about the work transformation that had occurred, about all the ways surrender was bearing fruit. The weight of control had almost destroyed me, but learning to let it go was saving me, was saving my marriage, was saving my relationships with my daughters, was saving my career, was saving my life. God had spoken. The weight of control is not yours, but mine. And I was finally, slowly, imperfectly but genuinely, learning to believe that, to live that, to surrender that. And in the surrendering, I was finding freedom I'd never known was possible. The journey continued, but I was walking it differently now, not white-knuckled and terrified, but open-handed and trusting, not alone, but held, not crushed by weight, but lightened by grace. And that made all the difference. 8 months into my journey of surrender, I faced a test that revealed just how much I'd changed and how much further I still had to go. It started with a phone call from Emma's school. She'd been in a minor car accident in the student parking lot. No one was hurt, but her car was damaged. The old me would have spiraled immediately into panic, interrogation, and attempts to control every aspect of what happened next. But when the school counselor called, I took a breath before responding. "Is she okay?" "She's fine. Shaken up but not injured." The other driver wasn't injured either. It was just a fender bender. She backed into another student's car while leaving a parking space. "Can I talk to her?" Emma got on the phone, crying. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I wasn't paying attention. I was looking at my phone, and I just backed right into someone. I'm so stupid. You're going to be so mad." My first instinct was to lecture her about phone usage while driving, to express disappointment, to make sure she understood the seriousness of the mistake. But I caught myself. She already knew she'd made a mistake. She was already devastated. What she needed wasn't a lecture. It was grace. "Emma, I'm just glad you're okay. Cars can be fixed. You can't. I'm coming to get you." "You're not mad?" I'm not mad. Concerned, yes. Wanting to make sure you're okay, yes, but not mad. Accidents happen. This is how you learn. I'll be there in 15 minutes. When I picked her up, she was still shaking. We sat in the school parking lot for a while, not saying much, just being present. Eventually, she said, "The old you would have yelled at me. The old me would have. Because the old me thought controlling your behavior and preventing all mistakes was my job. But I'm learning that's not my job. My job is to love you, support you, and help you learn from mistakes when they happen, which they will, because you're human. I feel so stupid. You made a mistake. That doesn't make you stupid. It makes you a teenager learning to drive. This is normal. This is expected. And this is how you learn to be more careful. What about the insurance and the cost of fixing the cars? That's my problem to handle, not yours. Your job is to learn from this and be more careful going forward. My job is to handle the adult consequences. We don't need to blur those lines." On the drive home, Emma was quiet for a while. Then she said, "Dad, can I tell you something?" "Of course. I've been worried about you, about whether you're really changing or just pretending to be okay. But today, how you responded to the accident, that showed me it's real. You're actually different. You're actually letting go of control. And that makes me feel safe in a way I never felt before." "What do you mean?" "Before I felt safe because you were managing everything, but it was a tense, anxious kind of safe, like walking on eggshells. Now I feel safe because I know you'll be okay even when things go wrong. That you trust that we'll all be okay. That's a different kind of safe, a better kind." Her words stayed with me. I'd thought control created safety, but it had actually created anxiety. Real safety came from trust. Trust that we could handle challenges, that mistakes weren't catastrophic, that imperfection was okay. That week at therapy, I told Dr. Reynolds about the accident and my response. "That's significant growth," she said. "A year ago, how would you have reacted?" I would have panicked, interrogated her about every detail, tried to figure out how to prevent future accidents. Maybe restricted her driving. Definitely made her feel worse than she already felt. And instead, I offered grace. I separated her mistake from her worth. I handled the adult consequences without making them her emotional burden. I was present with her distress without trying to fix it immediately. That's beautiful. That's what healthy parenting looks like, providing security through consistency and grace rather than through control and prevention. But it was hard. Every instinct wanted to control, to prevent, to manage. I had to consciously choose different. That's the work, that conscious choosing. Eventually it becomes more automatic. But right now, you're still building new neural pathways, still training your brain that surrender is safe, that trust works, that letting go doesn't lead to disaster. How long until it becomes automatic? There's no timeline. For some people, years. For others, it's a lifelong practice. The goal isn't to never feel the urge to control. It's to recognize the urge and choose differently. You're doing that. That's success. That month, the book I'd been writing took shape. What had started as personal reflections evolved into a structured manuscript. I'd titled it The Weight of Control, Learning to Surrender What Was Never Yours to Carry. I sent the draft to James for feedback. He called me 2 days later. "Julian, this is powerful, really powerful. You need to publish this." "I don't know. It feels self-indulgent. Like, who am I to write about this when I'm still learning?" "That's exactly why you should write it. You're not claiming to be an expert or to have it all figured out. You're sharing your journey. That's what people need. Not someone who's arrived, but someone who's walking the path and willing to be honest about it." "Oh, but what if it doesn't help anyone? What if it does? What if your story gives someone else permission to start their own journey? What if reading about your struggles helps someone recognize their own? You can't control whether it helps people or not. You can only control whether you're willing to be vulnerable enough to try." He was right. The need to know it would succeed before trying, that was control too. wanting guaranteed outcomes before taking action. But faith meant moving forward without guarantees. Trust meant offering something without knowing if it would be received. I submitted the manuscript to a Christian publisher that specialized in personal transformation stories. 3 weeks later, they offered me a contract. They wanted to publish it within 6 months, with a book tour to follow. When I told Sarah, she cried. "I'm so proud of you, not just for writing it, but for being willing to be this vulnerable. For sharing our family's story, with my permission and the girls' permission I know, to help others. That takes courage. It's terrifying. What if people judge us? What if they think I'm a terrible father for how I was? Then they miss the point. The point isn't that you were perfect. It's that you were willing to change, that you're still changing. That transformation is possible. Anyone who judges that is someone who isn't ready for their own growth yet." I told Emma and Olivia about the book. I wanted their permission before sharing our family's story publicly. "Will you use our real names?" Emma asked. "Not unless you want me to. I can change names, identifying details, whatever you're comfortable with." "I think you should use our real names, because this isn't a shameful story. This is a story about a family that was struggling and found healing. That's beautiful. Why hide from that?" Olivia agreed. "And Dad, maybe our story helps another girl who's dealing with anxiety see that it's not her fault, that generational patterns are real, that getting help is okay. If my story can do that, I want it told. Their permission, their support, their willingness to be vulnerable for the sake of others. It was evidence of how much our whole family had changed. We'd gone from hiding dysfunction behind controlled perfection to openly acknowledging struggle and growth. 2 weeks later, I was invited to speak at a men's conference about surrender and control. 500 men gathering for a weekend of honest conversation about masculinity, faith, and transformation. Standing on that stage, looking at hundreds of faces, I felt exposed, vulnerable, terrified. But I told my story anyway, about my father's chaos and my response, about controlling my family, about Emma's breakdown and Sarah's ultimatum, about therapy and surrender and learning to let go, about the ongoing work of trust. When I finished, the response was overwhelming, not polite applause, but standing ovation, not because my story was extraordinary, but because it was familiar. Every man in that room was fighting some version of the same battle, trying to control what couldn't be controlled, carrying weights they weren't meant to carry, exhausting themselves trying to manage everything. During the Q&A, one man asked, "How do you balance surrendering control with being a responsible man? Don't our families need us to lead, to provide, to protect?" "Yes, but leadership isn't control. Provision isn't micromanagement. Protection isn't preventing all challenges. Real leadership is creating space for others to grow. Real provision is teaching others to develop their own capabilities. Real protection is giving people tools to handle challenges, not eliminating all challenges for them." Another man: "What about when your wife or kids make decisions you think are wrong? Do you just surrender and let them make mistakes?" "It depends. If it's a matter of safety or ethics, yes, I intervene. But if it's a matter of preference or learning opportunity, I let them choose and learn from consequences." For example, Emma wanted to do the musical. I thought it would be too much. But I let her choose, and she managed it beautifully. If I'd controlled that decision, she wouldn't have learned she was capable. My job isn't to prevent all mistakes. It's to be present when mistakes happen, to help process them, to support growth. After the conference, dozens of men approached me, each with their own story of control, each hungry for permission to let go, each desperate for the freedom I'd found. One man particularly stood out. "I'm a surgeon. My job is literally to control outcomes, to manage every variable during surgery, to save lives. But I've carried that control into my family. My wife says I'm suffocating her. My kids are afraid of me. I don't know how to be different when control is what I'm trained to do." I get that. I'm a project manager. Control was my job too. But here's what I learned. There's appropriate control for appropriate contexts. In surgery, you need to manage variables carefully. That's responsible. But your family isn't a surgery. Your wife isn't a patient who needs you to manage her life. Your kids aren't procedures that need perfect execution. They're people who need love, trust, and space to be human. You can be excellent at your job without bringing that approach home. How do I learn to separate them? Practice, therapy, community, prayer, daily choosing to be different at home than you are at work. It's hard. It goes against your training. But it's possible. I'm living proof. We exchanged contact information. He joined the men's group I was leading, and over the following weeks, I watched him begin his own journey of surrender. That month, Olivia had a major breakthrough. She'd been working with Dr. Patel for 6 months, learning to manage her anxiety. One evening, she came home from school, excited. "Dad, I had a panic attack today, but this time I used the tools Dr. Patel taught me. I did the breathing exercises. I challenged the anxious thoughts. I reminded myself that panic attacks don't last forever, and it passed. I got through it without falling apart. That's amazing, Liv. I'm so proud of you. The best part was, I didn't need you to fix it. I handled it myself. That made me feel strong, like I'm not broken, like I can manage this." Her words brought tears to my eyes. This was the goal. Not to control her healing, but to support her while she learned to handle challenges herself, to give her tools instead of taking over, to trust her capability instead of assuming she needed me to manage everything for her. At family therapy that week, Dr. Patel said, "I want to acknowledge the growth I'm seeing in this family. Julian, you've moved from controlling to supporting. Sarah, you've moved from accommodating to setting healthy boundaries. Emma, you're developing autonomy while staying connected. Olivia, you're learning to manage anxiety without it managing you. This is what healthy family functioning looks like." "It doesn't always feel healthy," I admitted. "Sometimes it feels messy, uncertain, out of control." "That's because it is out of control, which is exactly how it should be. Healthy families aren't controlled systems. They're interdependent systems where each person has autonomy, makes mistakes, learns and grows. The messiness you're feeling is actually health. It's what happens when you stop trying to manage everyone and let them be themselves." That perspective shifted something in me. I'd equated order with health, but real health was messier than I'd realized. It was people making mistakes and learning from them. It was uncertainty and trust. It was letting go of the illusion of control and embracing the reality of interdependence. One evening, I was sitting in my home office working on final edits for the book when Sarah came in. "Can we talk?" "Of course." I closed my laptop, giving her full attention, something I'd been practicing intentionally. "I want to tell you something I've never told you about why I married you." "Okay." "I married you because you made me feel safe. After growing up with chaos, my parents' divorce, the instability, I was attracted to your stability, your reliability, your order. But over the years, that same stability became suffocating. The thing that attracted me to you became the thing that was killing our marriage. I'm sorry. Let me finish. What I'm realizing now is that I needed to learn something too. I needed to learn that real safety doesn't come from someone controlling everything. It comes from both people being secure enough in themselves that they don't need control. You're learning to surrender. I'm learning that I don't need you to manage everything to feel safe. We're both growing, and that's making our marriage healthier than it's ever been. So, you're saying my control issues helped you discover your own issues? Kind of. We were both using your control as a crutch. You to manage anxiety, me to avoid taking responsibility for my own security. Now that you're letting go, I have to stand on my own feet. And it's scary, but it's good. It's growth. So we're both becoming healthier people. We're both becoming whole people. That's even better. That conversation stayed with me. I'd thought my control only affected me, my anxiety, my exhaustion, but it had affected everyone around me. Zara had been unable to develop her own strength because I was managing everything. The girls couldn't learn autonomy because I was preventing all mistakes. My team couldn't develop confidence because I was hovering constantly. Letting go of control wasn't just about my freedom. It was creating space for everyone else's growth too. My surrender was enabling their emergence. That night, I prayed with a gratitude I hadn't felt before. God, thank you for showing me that surrender isn't just about my healing. It's about creating space for others to become who you made them to be. Thank you for teaching me that control, even well-intentioned, suffocates growth. Thank you for the courage to let go. Thank you for holding what I'm releasing. The weight of control is not mine, but yours. And in putting it down, I'm discovering that everyone around me can stand up. That's beautiful. That's redemption. That's transformation. 8 months in and the journey continued. Not finished, not perfected, but undeniably different. I was becoming someone new, someone who could let go, someone who could trust, someone who could surrender. And in that becoming, everyone around me was becoming too. That was the real miracle. Not just my transformation, but the ripple effect of it. Not just my freedom, but the freedom it created for others. The weight of control was not mine, but God's. And in learning that truth, I was learning to live, really live, fully live, free. 1 year after that Sunday sermon, 1 year after hearing the weight of control is not yours but mine, I stood in front of a mirror getting ready for the book launch. The man looking back at me was recognizably me, but fundamentally different. The tight anxiety that used to define my face had been replaced by something softer. Peace, maybe. Or at least the beginning of peace. The book had released that week. The Weight of Control was in bookstores, on Amazon, available for anyone to read. My story, my family's story, our journey from suffocating control to freeing surrender. It felt vulnerable and terrifying and right all at the same time. Sarah came up behind me, adjusting my tie. Nervous? Terrified. What if no one comes? What if they come and hate it? What if sharing our story was a mistake? That's the control talking. You can't control how people respond. You can only control whether you're willing to be honest, and you have been. That's enough. She was right. I'd spent a year learning this lesson. I couldn't control outcomes, only my own choices. I'd chosen to write honestly. How people received it was beyond my control. The book launch was at a local bookstore. We'd expected maybe 30 or 40 people, friends, family, church members. But when we arrived, the store was packed. Over 100 people. Some I knew, many I didn't. Julian, James pushed through the crowd. Look at this turnout. Your story is resonating. I read excerpts from the book, shared about my journey, answered questions, and person after person came up afterward to share their own struggles with control. I'm a mum of 3, one woman said. And I've been suffocating my kids just like you described. Your book gave me permission to start letting go. Thank you. A man in his 50s. I'm a CEO. Built my company through control and micromanagement, but I'm exhausted. And my team is suffering. Your chapter about workplace control, it was like you were describing me. I needed to read that. A young woman. My father was controlling. I swore I'd never be like him. But I'm exactly like him, just with my boyfriend instead of with kids. I control everything about our relationship because I'm afraid of chaos. But reading your story showed me that control doesn't prevent pain. It creates it. Story after story. Control manifesting in different ways, but with the same root. Fear. Fear of chaos. Fear of pain. Fear of loss. Fear of not being enough. And each person searching for the same thing I'd been searching for, permission to let go, assurance that surrender wouldn't lead to disaster, hope that trust was possible. Over the next month, the book gained traction. It hit the Christian bestseller list. I was invited to podcasts, radio shows, conferences. Each platform another opportunity to share about surrender, about letting go, about trusting God with weights we were never meant to carry. One interview particularly impacted me. The host asked, What would you say to someone who's reading your book right now, who recognizes themselves in your story, but is afraid to start their own journey of surrender? I thought about it. I'd say, start small. Don't try to surrender everything at once. Pick one thing, one small thing you're trying to control, and practice letting go of just that. For me, it was dinner time. For you, it might be something different, but practice letting go of one thing and see what happens. More often than not, you'll discover that the disaster you feared doesn't happen, and that gives you courage to let go of something else. Surrender is a practice, not a destination. You don't have to be perfect at it. You just have to be willing to try. After that interview, I received hundreds of emails from people who'd started their own one small thing practice. A father who stopped controlling his son's college choices. A wife who stopped managing her husband's schedule. A manager who stopped micromanaging her team. Each small surrender creating space for growth and freedom. Emma graduated from high school that spring. The old me would have controlled every aspect of her college decision. Where she applied, what she majored in, how she planned her future. But the new me practiced trust. Where do you want to apply? I asked her. I've been thinking about it. I want to study theater, maybe in New York or Chicago. I know you probably want me closer to home, but Emma, this is your decision, not mine. You're an adult now. You get to choose your own path. I'm here to support whatever you decide, but I'm not going to control it. She stared at me. Really? You're not going to try to talk me into staying local or choosing a practical major? Really? You're capable of making this decision, and whatever you choose, you'll learn from it. That's more valuable than me preventing you from making any mistakes. She hugged me, crying. Thank you for trusting me, Dad. That means more than you know. When Emma got accepted to NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, her first choice, my immediate instinct was anxiety. New York City, so far away, so many risks, so many variables I couldn't control. But I caught myself, breathed through it, reminded myself, she's capable, she's prepared, she'll figure it out, and if she struggles, she'll learn. My job isn't to prevent all struggle. It's to be available when struggle happens. I'm so proud of you, I told her at her graduation party. Not just for getting into Tisch, but for knowing what you want and pursuing it. That takes courage. I learned that from you. You're the one who showed me that it's okay to change course, to admit when something isn't working and choose different. If you can do that at 41, I can do it at 18. Her words reminded me. Our children are always watching, always learning from us. I'd spent 16 years modeling anxiety and control. Now I was modeling surrender and trust. And she was learning from both, learning what to hold on to and what to release. Olivia's journey with anxiety continued with ups and downs, but the trajectory was upward. She'd learned to manage panic attacks, developed coping strategies, built resilience. And perhaps most importantly, she'd learned that having anxiety didn't define her or limit her. Dad, I've been thinking, she said one evening. I want to share my story, maybe write a blog or something about teenage anxiety, about how it's not shameful, about how getting help is brave. Would that be okay? More than okay. I think that's beautiful, using your struggle to help others. That's redemption. I learned that from your book. How you used your control issues to help other people recognize theirs. I want to do the same with anxiety. She started a blog called Anxious and Okay. Wrote honestly about panic attacks, therapy, medication, coping strategies. And teenagers from around the world found it and commented, I thought I was the only one. Thank you for making me feel less alone. Your honesty gave me courage to tell my parents I need help. Watching my daughters use their struggles to help others, that was one of the most beautiful outcomes of our family's healing. We'd gone from hiding dysfunction to openly sharing about growth, and that openness was creating space for others to be honest too. At work, the transformation continued. My company promoted me to regional director, overseeing multiple project managers instead of managing individual projects. The old me would have tried to control all of them. The new me focused on vision, support, and trust. "You've changed how this whole department operates," my boss said during my review. "When you were micromanaging your own projects, the culture was fear-based. Now that you're leading through trust, the whole region is thriving. Team morale is up, productivity is up, innovation is up. Whatever you're doing, teach it to the other managers." So I started leading workshops on trust-based leadership, on the difference between control and responsibility, on empowering teams instead of micromanaging them, on creating cultures of psychological safety instead of cultures of fear. And I realized the surrender I'd learned personally was applicable professionally. The same principles that were healing my family were transforming my workplace. Let go of control. Trust people. Focus on what's yours to do and release what isn't. Create space for others to grow instead of managing their every move. That summer, Sarah and I celebrated our 20th anniversary. We renewed our vows at a small ceremony with close friends and family, and the vows we made were different from the ones we'd made 20 years earlier. "I vow to trust you instead of trying to control you," I said. "I vow to be present with you instead of managing you. I vow to support your growth instead of directing your choices. I vow to share life with you instead of organizing it for you. I vow to love you with open hands instead of clenched fists." Sarah's vows were equally meaningful. "I vow to communicate my needs instead of expecting you to anticipate them. I vow to take responsibility for my own security instead of demanding you provide it. I vow to grow alongside you instead of waiting for you to be perfect. I vow to receive your love instead of testing it. I vow to walk this journey with you through control and surrender, through struggle and growth, through fear and trust." Standing there, renewing our vows in front of people who'd walked our journey with us, I felt overwhelming gratitude. A year ago, our marriage had been on the edge of ending. Now it was stronger than it had been in years. Not because we'd become perfect, but because we'd become honest. Not because we'd eliminated all problems, but because we'd learned to face them together. The men's group I was leading had grown to 20 regular attendees. Each week, men shared their struggles with control. Each week, we practiced surrender together. Each week, transformation happened in small but real ways. One evening, a new guy showed up. Marcus, mid-30s, successful businessman, clearly uncomfortable being there. "I'm here because my wife gave me an ultimatum," he admitted. "She says I'm suffocating her with control, that if I don't change, she's leaving, and I don't know how to change. I don't even really understand what she's talking about. I'm just trying to be a good husband, a good father, a good provider." I saw myself in him, saw the confusion, the defensiveness, the genuine belief that his control was love rather than fear. "Tell me what your typical weekday looks like," I said. He described a life that was eerily similar to mine a year ago. Every moment scheduled, every decision managed, every variable controlled, his wife's schedule, his kids' activities, his work team's every move, all under his careful management. "And how do you feel?" I asked. "Exhausted, anxious, like I'm carrying the weight of the world. But if I don't manage everything, it will all fall apart." "What if I told you that's not true? That your family wouldn't fall apart if you stopped managing everything, that they might actually thrive?" "I don't believe that. I didn't either. A year ago I was you, controlling everything, convinced it was necessary. But it was killing me, killing my marriage, suffocating my daughters, and I didn't see it until my family almost fell apart because of my control, not in spite of it." I shared my story with him. Not the polished version from the book, but the raw version. The moments of failure, the times I'd grabbed control back, the ongoing struggle to choose trust over fear. "So you're saying I have to just let go, stop managing, let everything be chaotic?" "No, I'm saying you have to learn the difference between appropriate responsibility and controlling behavior. You're responsible for your own choices, your own actions, your own responses. You're not responsible for controlling outcomes, other people's choices, circumstances beyond your influence. That's the distinction you need to learn. How do I learn that? Therapy, community, prayer, practice, daily choosing to let go of one small thing. It's hard work, the hardest I've ever done, but it's worth it because control isn't strength, it's fear, and surrender isn't weakness, it's trust. Real strength is being secure enough that you don't need to control everything. Marcus started coming to the group every week, started therapy, started his own journey of surrender, and over the months that followed, I watched him transform the way I had, watched his marriage heal, watched his kids breathe, watched him discover freedom he hadn't known existed, and I realized this was my calling now, not just managing construction projects, but helping men build lives based on trust instead of control. Not just writing about surrender, but walking with people through the actual practice of it. One afternoon, I received a call from a church in another state. They'd read my book and wanted me to speak at a weekend retreat for families struggling with control and anxiety. 300 families, a chance to share not just my story, but practical tools for surrender. I don't know if I'm qualified, I told the pastor who called. You're not an expert. You're a fellow traveler. That's exactly what people need. Not someone who has it all figured out, but someone who's walking the path and willing to be honest about it. I accepted, and over the next months, more invitations came. Churches, conferences, retreats, workshops, each one an opportunity to share about surrender, each one a chance to help others begin their own journey. The night before, flying out for that first retreat, I sat in my home office looking at the framed quote on my wall. The weight of control is not yours, but mine. 1 year, 365 days of learning to live that truth. Not perfectly, not without setbacks, but genuinely, really, transformatively. I thought about everything that had changed. My marriage restored, my daughters thriving, my work transformed, my anxiety significantly reduced, my relationships deepened, my purpose clarified, all because I'd been willing to let go, to surrender, to trust, to release the weight I'd been carrying that was never mine to carry. I prayed, God, thank you. Thank you for that Sunday sermon 1 year ago that wrecked my controlled world. Thank you for not letting me stay stuck in patterns that were killing me. Thank you for the pain that forced me to change. Thank you for my father's death that taught me it's never too late, but also that sooner is better. Thank you for Sarah's ultimatum that gave me a choice point. Thank you for Emma's breakdown that showed me the cost of my control. Thank you for Olivia's anxiety that revealed generational patterns. Thank you for every hard thing that led to transformation. A year ago, I was drowning under the weight of trying to control everything. Today, I'm learning to swim in the freedom of surrender. I'm not there yet. I still grab for control sometimes. I still struggle with trust. I still have moments of intense anxiety. But I'm different, fundamentally, undeniably different. And that difference is creating ripples. Sarah is becoming more whole. The girls are developing healthy autonomy. My work is more effective. The men's group is growing. The book is helping people. Marcus is beginning his journey. Families at this retreat will hear about surrender. The weight I put down is being picked up by you. And in your hands, it's not a burden. In your hands, it's light. In your hands, it's grace. The weight of control is not mine, but yours. I'm learning to believe that. I'm learning to live that. I'm learning to teach that. 1 year in, so much growth, so much healing, so much transformation. And yet I know this is just the beginning. This is a lifelong journey, an ongoing practice, a daily choosing. But I'm choosing. Every day I'm choosing. And that choosing is changing everything. Thank you for walking with me, for teaching me, for holding what I'm learning to release, for being patient with my slow learning, for celebrating my small victories, for lifting me up when I fall back into control, for reminding me that surrender is always available, always possible, always grace. Use my story however you want. Lead me wherever you're leading. I'm yours, open-handed, trusting, surrendering. The weight of control is not mine, but yours. And I'm finally, slowly, imperfectly but genuinely learning to live free. I closed my journal and turned off the light. Tomorrow, I'd speak to 300 families about surrender, would share my story, would offer tools and hope and permission to let go. But tonight, I was just Julian, a man who'd been suffocating under control and was learning to breathe in surrender, a husband rebuilding intimacy, a father trusting his daughters, a leader empowering his team, a follower walking with God, 1 year in, and grateful for every moment of the journey, even the painful ones, especially the painful ones, because they'd led here to freedom, to life, to grace. 18 months after that life-changing Sunday sermon, I stood at the edge of the Grand Canyon watching the sunrise. I'd come here alone, not because I was running from anything, but because I was running toward something, toward solitude, toward reflection, toward gratitude for how far I'd come and how much I'd learned. The vastness of the canyon reminded me of something I'd been learning. I am small. My control is limited. My ability to manage the universe is laughable. But God is vast. God is capable. God holds what I cannot hold. I thought about the journey that had brought me here. 18 months ago, I'd been drowning, suffocating my family with control, crushing myself with the weight of trying to manage everything, convinced that if I relaxed my grip even slightly, disaster would follow. Now, I was learning to live with open hands, learning that surrender wasn't weakness, but wisdom, learning that trust was more powerful than control, learning that the weight of everything was never mine to carry in the first place. The changes were undeniable. My marriage was thriving in ways it never had before. Sarah and I were partners now, not controller and controlled. We made decisions together. We navigated challenges together. We supported each other's growth instead of one person directing the other's life. Emma was at NYU, calling weekly with updates about classes, friends, challenges, and I was learning to listen without trying to fix, to support without managing, to trust that she was capable of handling her own life. Some weeks she struggled. Those were the hardest for me, hearing her stress and not being able to control the situation for her. But I was learning that my job wasn't to eliminate her struggles. It was to be present with her through them. "Dad, I failed my acting midterm," she'd called 2 weeks ago, crying. The old me would have panicked, would have problem-solved, would have tried to figure out how to fix it, prevent future failures, control the outcome. But I'd taken a breath and said, "That's really hard. I'm sorry. Tell me what happened." We'd talked for an hour. She'd processed her disappointment, figured out what she needed to do differently, made her own plan for improvement. And I'd just been present, listening, supporting, trusting that she could handle it. "Thanks for not freaking out," she'd said at the end, "for just being there. That's what I needed." Olivia was thriving too. Her blog had grown to thousands of followers. She was speaking at her school about mental health, leading a support group for students with anxiety, using her struggle to help others in ways that were beautiful and redemptive. "Dad, I've been thinking," she told me recently. "I want to study psychology in college, help other people who struggle with anxiety, turn my pain into purpose." "That's beautiful, Liv. I'm so proud of you. I learned it from you. You turned your control issues into a ministry, showed me that our struggles don't have to define us. They can refine us, that our wounds can become wisdom." Her words had brought tears to my eyes. This was the goal, not to eliminate all struggle, but to let struggle become transformation. Not to prevent all pain, but to let pain become purpose. Not to control outcomes, but to trust the process. The book had exceeded all expectations. It had been on bestseller lists for months, had been translated into 6 languages, had sparked a movement of people learning to surrender control. I received emails daily from people sharing their own journeys, marriages being saved, families breathing again, leaders transforming workplace cultures, parents learning to trust their children. One email particularly moved me. From a mother of 3, I read your book 6 months ago, started practicing surrender with one small thing, bedtime. I let my kids stay up 30 minutes later if they wanted. It felt terrifying, but nothing bad happened, so I surrendered another thing, and another. Now 6 months later, my whole parenting approach has changed. I'm not the anxious controller anymore, I'm the supportive presence, and my kids are thriving. Thank you for showing me it was possible. The speaking engagements had multiplied. Churches, conferences, corporations, universities, each venue a different audience but the same core message. Control is an illusion. Surrender is freedom. Trust is the only real security. Last month, I'd spoken at a leadership conference for CEOs, 500 business leaders, most of whom had built their success on control and micromanagement. I'd shared about the cost of control, on health, relationships, team culture, innovation, about how trust-based leadership outperformed control-based leadership in every measurable way. But how do you let go without everything falling apart? One CEO asked. You distinguish between what's yours to do and what's not. You're responsible for vision, values, strategy, creating culture. You're not responsible for controlling every decision, managing every detail, preventing every mistake. When you try to control everything, you create bottlenecks, you stifle innovation, you prevent your team from developing their own capabilities. But when you trust, when you empower people and create space for them to grow, that's when real performance happens. Another CEO, what if they fail? What if trusting them leads to mistakes? Then they learn from mistakes. That's how people grow. You can't develop capable leaders if you're managing their every move. You have to create space for them to try, to fail, to learn, to improve. Yes, there will be mistakes, but the cost of those mistakes is less than the cost of a fearful, disempowered, innovation-stifling culture that comes from controlling leadership. After that conference, 3 CEOs hired me as a consultant to help transform their company cultures from control-based to trust-based. It was becoming clear that God was using my personal journey to speak into professional contexts I'd never imagined. The men's group had become a church ministry now, officially sanctioned, with multiple groups meeting across different locations. Over 100 men participating weekly, each group led by someone who'd been through their own journey of surrender, each creating space for honest conversation about control, fear, and trust. Marcus, the guy who'd shown up with an ultimatum from his wife, was now leading one of the groups. His transformation had been profound. His marriage had healed. His kids were breathing. And now he was walking with other men through the same journey. You saved my marriage, he told me. A year ago, I was weeks away from divorce. Now my wife and I are closer than we've been in years. All because you showed me that control was fear, not love. That trust was strength, not weakness. Thank you. I didn't save your marriage, you did. By being willing to do the hard work, by choosing to change. I just showed you it was possible. That's all anyone needs sometimes. Someone to go first. Someone to show that the path exists. You did that for me. Now I'm trying to do that for others. That was the ripple effect. One person's transformation creating space for another's. One surrender inspiring another. One journey giving permission for others to begin. My relationship with my mother had deepened too. We talked regularly now, honest conversations about the past, about my father, about generational patterns, about healing. She'd started her own therapy, working through her responses to my father's chaos, her passivity that had enabled dysfunction, her guilt about not protecting me better as a child. You're breaking the patterns, she told me during a recent visit. The chaos, the control. You're ending it with your generation. Your daughters won't have to unlearn what you and I had to unlearn. That's beautiful, that's redemption. At work, I'd been asked to write the company's new leadership development curriculum. to teach the principles of trust-based leadership to every manager in the organization, to transform the culture from top-down control to empowered teamwork. "You've proven this works," my boss said. "Your region outperforms every other region. Not because you're managing better, but because you're trusting more. We want to scale that across the company." It was surreal. 18 months ago, I'd been on the verge of being pushed out because my controlling was causing project failures. Now, I was being asked to teach the opposite approach: trust, empowerment, surrender to the entire organization. God's sense of irony was not lost on me. Standing at the Grand Canyon, watching the sun illuminate layer after layer of ancient rock, I thought about depth, about how transformation happens in layers, not all at once, but gradually, not in a single moment, but through countless choices. I'd thought surrender was a one-time decision, but it was a daily practice, sometimes an hourly practice. Every day presented new opportunities to choose control or trust. Every situation tested whether I'd grip or release. Every challenge asked whether I believed God was holding what I couldn't hold. Most days, I chose well. Some days, I slipped back into old patterns, but the difference now was that I recognized it quickly, caught myself, made a different choice, apologized when I needed to, adjusted course without shame. That was growth too, not perfection, but awareness. Not never struggling, but recovering faster. Not elimination of control tendencies, but developing new neural pathways that made trust more automatic. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "How's the Grand Canyon? Missing you, but glad you're taking this time. Love you." I smiled. 18 months ago, I couldn't have taken a solo trip, couldn't have been unreachable, couldn't have trusted that my family would be okay without me managing everything. But now I could, because I'd learned they were capable. Because I'd learned that my presence wasn't what held everything together. God's presence was. I responded, "Beautiful, vast, humbling, grateful. Love you too. See you tomorrow." That afternoon I hiked down into the canyon. Not far, just enough to feel small, to be surrounded by enormity, to experience the reality of my limitations. And it was freeing, to be small, to be limited, to acknowledge I couldn't control the vastness around me. That's what surrender felt like. Not defeated smallness, but liberated smallness. Not crushed insignificance, but peaceful recognition that I didn't have to be everything, know everything, control everything. I could be small and limited and still be okay, because God was vast and unlimited and holding everything. As I sat on a rock overlooking the canyon, I prayed, "God, 18 months ago, you spoke to me through a sermon. The weight of control is not yours, but mine." At the time, I didn't know how to receive those words. I knew I needed to hear them, but I didn't know how to live them. 18 months of learning, 18 months of practicing, 18 months of choosing trust over control, surrender over grip, openness over fear. And look where I am now. Marriage thriving, daughters flourishing, work transformed, ministry birthed, book published, lives impacted, patterns broken, freedom discovered. All because I was willing to let go. All because you caught what I released. All because you were holding everything all along, and I finally stopped pretending I was. Thank you. Thank you for that Sunday morning sermon. Thank you for speaking words that wrecked my controlled world. Thank you for not letting me stay stuck. Thank you for walking with me through every hard choice, every moment of anxiety, every time I wanted to grab control back. Thank you for Sarah's ultimatum that gave me a choice point. Thank you for Emma's breakdown that showed me the cost of my control. Thank you for Olivia's anxiety that revealed generational patterns. Thank you for my father's death that taught me it's never too late but sooner is better. Thank you for every painful thing that became a catalyst for transformation. I'm not the same man I was 18 months ago. I'm not perfect. I still struggle. I still have moments of intense control. But I'm different, fundamentally, undeniably, beautifully different. The weight of control is not mine, but yours. I believe that now, not just intellectually, but experientially. I'm living it, teaching it, modeling it for my daughters, sharing it with others. And I'm discovering that surrender isn't the end of something, it's the beginning of peace, the beginning of trust, the beginning of real relationship, the beginning of freedom, the beginning of life as it was meant to be lived. Use me however you want. Lead me wherever you're leading. I'm yours, completely yours, open-handed, trusting, surrendering, living free. The weight of control is not mine, but yours. And I'm finally, truly, deeply, consistently learning to live like that's true. I sat there for hours, watching the light change on the canyon walls, feeling the wind, being present, practicing the very thing I'd been learning for 18 months, being instead of managing, receiving instead of controlling, trusting instead of gripping. Eventually, I hiked back up to the rim, drove back to my hotel, had dinner alone without needing to check my phone constantly, slept deeply without anxiety waking me at 3 a.m. The next morning, flying home, I thought about what awaited me. Family dinner with Sarah and Olivia, video call with Emma at NYU, men's group Monday night, work meetings Tuesday, speaking engagement next weekend, consultation with a CEO the week after. Writing sessions for the next book. Yes, there would be another book. This one about trust-based parenting. Life was full, but it wasn't overwhelming because I wasn't trying to control all of it. I was participating in it, responding to it, trusting God with the outcomes while being faithful in my responsibilities. That was the difference. That was the transformation. That was what surrender had given me. When I walked through the door at home, Sarah and Olivia were there. Not because I'd called to announce my arrival, not because they'd been anxiously awaiting my return, but just because they happened to be there, living their lives, doing their things, confident that I'd arrive when I arrived. "Dad!" Olivia hugged me. "How was the Grand Canyon?" "Incredible, vast, humbling, exactly what I needed." "Did you have any profound insights?" Sarah asked with a knowing smile. "Just one. I'm small. God is big, and that's exactly how it should be." That evening we had dinner together. No rigid schedule, no controlled agenda, just family being together, sharing about our days, laughing, being present. Emma called during dinner. "Dad, guess what? I got cast in the spring production, a major role." "That's amazing. Tell me about it." She talked excitedly about the play, the character, the director, and I listened without trying to manage any of it, without worrying about how it would affect her grades or her schedule or her future, just celebrating with her, being proud of her, trusting that she was capable of handling it all. After we hung up, Olivia said, "You're really different, Dad. A year and a half ago, you would have asked a million questions about how she'd manage the time commitment. Now you just trust her." I'm learning, still learning, but yes, I'm different, and that difference is making our family healthier. Later that night, Sarah and I were getting ready for bed. "You know what I'm most grateful for," she said. "Not that you stopped controlling everything, though I'm grateful for that, but that you did the work, that you didn't just make promises and then slide back into old patterns. You actually changed. That takes courage, that takes commitment, and I'm so proud of you for it. I couldn't have done it without you. Without your ultimatum that gave me a choice point, without your patience while I learned, without your support through the hard parts. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for believing I could change even when I didn't believe it myself. We grew together. That's what makes it beautiful. This wasn't just your journey, it was ours. We're both different now, both better, both more whole." Lying in bed that night, I thought about the journey, 18 months from that Sunday sermon to here, from drowning in control to learning to swim in surrender, from suffocating my family to creating space for everyone to breathe, from crushing anxiety to peaceful trust, from doing it all alone to walking in community, from closed fists to open hands. The transformation wasn't complete. It would never be complete. This was lifelong work. But I was on the path, walking it, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one surrender at a time. And that was enough. That would always be enough. The weight of control was not mine, but God's. I'd heard those words 18 months ago. Now I was living them, teaching them, modeling them, sharing them, and in the living I'd discovered something profound. The weight I'd been carrying was crushing me. But when I put it down, when I let God carry it, I discovered I was meant to fly. Not to manage everything, but to trust everything to the one who could. Not to control outcomes, but to be faithful in the moment. Not to grip tightly, but to hold loosely. Not to carry weights I was never meant to carry, but to let God hold what only He could hold. That was the message. That was the truth. That was the freedom. The weight of control is not yours, but mine. 18 months of learning that lesson, and a lifetime ahead of continuing to learn it. But I was learning, I was growing, I was changing. And in the changing, I was becoming who I was always meant to be. Not the controller, but the beloved. Not the manager, but the child. Not the one holding everything together, but the one being held. By God, always by God. The one who spoke those words 18 months ago. The one who walked with me through every step of the journey. The one who was holding what I was learning to release. The one who would continue teaching me, day by day, moment by moment, surrender by surrender. The weight of control is not mine, but His, and I was finally, truly, deeply, peacefully learning to live free. That was the transformation. That was the testimony. That was the gift. And I would spend the rest of my life grateful for it, sharing it, living it, teaching it, one open hand at a time, always,